It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope that you are having a great week. Here is our week is about to come to an end. Very exciting holiday weekend. Hope you get a chance to get a nice little rest, relaxation here in the middle of the summer. Anthony Haney alongside. Haney, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. I'm doing just fine.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Not too much. I got a little workout in earlier today, so I'm feeling good.
I love that. I got a nice little run in earlier today. So that was nice. I haven't been running as much. I think I'm almost ready to sign up for my next race though. Like, I do think that coming up here pretty quickly, I've made up my mind on the race I want to do. The problem is I can't commit to it yet because I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing during football season. And this race is on a Sunday during the football season. So that's
Do the Commanders have
they have a road game that day.
It's a big game.
It's at Baltimore. So there's also a chance that even if it's on the road, depending on what I'm doing, any number of iterations of what I'm doing, I could be going. So I really just don't know what I want to do yet. But I do know that not being ready is not an option, and thus my butt's got to get. I got to get ready. Is basically the point. That's the point of what has got to happen. Is there's got to be a lot more running over the next bunch of weeks, and that's okay. I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to get back on the horse, proverbially speaking.
I wish I could join you. Well, I could.
Why can't you? Why you don't want to run?
Nah.
What's wrong with that?
I'm still trying to get into the habit of just running just to run.
How's that going for you?
It's going okay. Yesterday I didn't do it, but last Tuesday I got up, I hit the field, ran a couple of hundreds, some sprints as well.
Okay.
But it's just still so hard. And then I hit the stair climber last Wednesday and earlier this morning. And I'm peaking at 10 minutes, Craig. I'm peaking at 10. I thought I was going to get to 15 today, and I was just like, 10 is good.
See, I don't get the stair climber thing. That's the thing that I don't understand for you. Why do you not just go outside and run easy? It's way better than a stair climber. Stair climber's tedious. It's boring. It's effortful. Like, you want to do something that's easy and chill, just get on the bike, bro.
Yeah, I mean the stair climber more so like pushes me. I like being pushed. I like being challenged. I think just running just to run, there's not a lot of fun in that for me.
Well, you just said though that's like what you want to do. Like you want.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but there's just no love for it, to be honest.
It does take a while to learn to love it. I will 100% give you that. It is not the most fun activity until you learn to embrace the challenge. And that's the thing. I think part of it when people learn to start running is you have to learn how to like set goals for yourself that are fun to actually chase. And so like for me early on in my running journey, it was like, okay, I want to make sure that I can run. Like it was honestly, I think we started more wintertime, so I was more on the treadmill. And so it was like, how long can I run keeping my heart rate in zone 2? So like below like 135, or like I would be like, okay, 140. And that made it a game because I had to like pick a speed that was not too fast, and you kind of gamify it. And could I find a pace that I could hold without my heart rate going kaboom? Now that number, if I were to run as slow as I used to, like I could go a long, long time in zone 2. But like that was the point, was I needed to build that up. So gamifying it and figuring out what the things are that you want to do that give you the right amount of excitement. But also, here's the other thing that I would say, especially when you get started, if you want running to become a habit for you, is do it with other, like, because you're not going to be like, oh, I want to start off with learn how to run for 10 minutes easy, like you're doing right now on the stair climber, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be part of your workout. So just go run for 10 minutes and then go do something else. Go lift weights or whatever. And then it becomes 15, and then it becomes 20, and then it becomes 25, and then it becomes 30. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I ran for 30 minutes. And then you're like, oh, maybe I'll go for a 40-minute run, and that's my entire workout today. See? You gotta Trojan horse it in.
You make it sound so easy, so simple.
Yeah, that's my job. Not this job. This job, I'm supposed to be talking about sports on the radio, but it's the middle of July. There's only so much we can do. We are going to rank the defensive coordinators in the NFC East coming up, and we will follow that up with a discussion of the defenses in the NFC East, which is a fun discussion. The defensive coordinator discussion from Take Command, and Anthony and I will take from the coordinators, put the players back into the equation, and we'll rank the defenses in the NFC East coming up at 4:30. But yeah, no, it really, a lot of it is just finding the strategy to make it so that you can, like, where are you? Where do you want to go? How do we build the bridge to get there? That's what coaching is. Both in the strength and conditioning and the performance world, but also if you're a 30% 3-point shooter and I need you to get to 37, what's our plan to get up them shots? What kind of form work do we need to do? That's coaching. Coaching, Anthony, is problem solving.
Well, I appreciate, the motivation, the encouragement. I will let you know how my running goes.
The wife is listening, and Rachel would like to know if you'd like to go running with her tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning is leg day for me. I have a lift, and then I fly out I head to the airport around like 11:30, 12.
Her second text said, because that would be funny.
Oh, first of all, she runs really far, and I don't know.
She's a little more limited right now. She's recovering from a foot injury, but she's getting her mileage back up a little bit. It would be short for her, far for you.
I was about to say.
She said, I think I'm only doing 5. When was the last time that you ran 5 miles, Anthony?
Probably during the course of basketball runs, over the course of time kind of thing. Not just 5 straight. Because basketball, you get to take breaks here and there. Yeah,
there's no quarter. It's not like, end of the first. I mean, you could do it that way. What if we thought of your runs in quarters? What if you did 4 8-minute runs? And that's how you got to 32 minutes. And you took, you take 2-minute breaks in between. Now it's your whole workout's 40 minutes, 4 8-minute quarters. 2-minute breaks in between. It's a 40-minute workout. Bang, bang, bang.
You don't think that sounds far?
You could be sitting there running. You'd be like, oh, yeah, it's only the first quarter. And then second quarter, you'd be like, I got to get to halftime. And then third quarter. And then by then, you're in the fourth quarter. You're like, I can't give up now.
Now I think I can actually do it. It's just more so when I run, I'm running with like speed and like, tempo. Because if I'm running a mile, I'm trying to get that mile done as fast as possible. I guess if I'm just running for just 8 minutes, I don't have to run as hard.
That's the thing. That's the beauty of running for time. When you run, this will change. Anybody out there listening that wants to get into running, you want to enjoy running, run for time, not distance.
Yeah.
Because if you are running for 8 minutes, so we decided to put 8-minute quarter. I don't know why that's the number I chose. 8-minute quarters on the clock for young Anthony Haney. He's out there running, right? If he runs faster, whether he runs an 8-minute mile or a 10-minute mile, that 8 minutes is the same.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. I like to think of it that way then, as opposed to originally was.
And maybe to start, we just start with like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Do
like 5 minutes, 2 to 3 minute break.
That's doable.
Yeah.
That's very doable.
Yeah. I think you got that in you.
Yeah.
You can run for 5 minutes at a time, 4 times.
Easily.
Yeah. You're a fit fella. And just, pop
We got to do it, though. We got to do it now.
Yeah. So we came up with a plan. We didn't know that's how we're starting the show today, but we've launched Anthony Haney's running plan, a goal that he set that I'm happy to help him reach. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, back to professionals in sports, although we'll talk about the coaches. Who is the best defensive coordinator in the NFC East? They're all new. Not necessarily new to the job, but they're all new to their current staffs, their current teams, their current posts. So who do Logan Paulson, I think, is the best defensive coordinator in the NFC East? We ranked him on Take Command. You'll hear it next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Of course, if you miss any part of the show, you can check out the Hoffman Show podcast wherever you get yours, and all those same places you can check out Take Command, the Commander's pod that I do with Logan Paulson. And earlier this week on the show, we did our NFC East coach rankings. For the head coach rankings and the offensive coordinator rankings, check out the full podcast. But we wanted to share with you the defensive coordinator ranking podcast, because then after this at 4:30, Anthony and I are going to take this information, add the rosters back in, and rank the NFC East defenses. So looking forward to that at 4:30. If you want to go ahead and preemptively give us your rankings on Twitter, you can at Craig Hoffman. But first, let's talk about the coaches, and let's get Logan's input. Take command for you here on the Hoffman Show. Last but certainly not least, the defensive coordinators, Logan Paulson. You got Joe Witt Jr. in Washington, Mike Zimmer back on the horn in Dallas, Shane Bowen comes from Tennessee to New York, and the legendary Vic Fangio in Philadelphia. Interesting group, very varied resumes. They're all new, so good luck with that. How'd your tape study go of a bunch of new guys?
It's just... they're all good, man. Like, I had to go back to 2019 to watch Zimmer stuff, and they're like this quarters-based defense, and then like the stuff that they do, and so like that's one thing they need, right? They need really good safety play. And what does Dallas have? They have a bunch of good safeties that can play in the box, can play in that quarters role. They're not in the true post. I thought, oh man, that's going to be a nice fit for him. And then the way they disguise stuff on third down with kind of that AA package where it's like, are we in man? Are we in two man? Are we bringing all out? Are we in one plug? And for them to be able to get there. So like on paper, like if you're just saying pen to paper, like who does the coolest stuff? It's probably Zimmer. He's just got this crazy like, oh, we're going to get in this zone pressure. We're going to have the middle guy read the quarterback's eyes. We're going to not even cover this concept over here and just rely on you're just like, this is like high level stuff. And it felt, watching it, especially considering it was 2019, like it was a little bit ahead of the curve. And like that's kind of what you see San Francisco 49ers running now, is like this quarters defensive base, right, which was out of vogue for a while, and like now it's back in. And then the third down package that they're running in 2019 is very similar to what Dan was running last year when he was, and Joe Witt Jr. were running when they were in Dallas. So on paper, it's probably, he does the most kind of interesting stuff, the most challenging stuff in terms of disguises and things like that. But Vic Fangio, man, like the defenses aren't overly complex, but the rules per concept are very nuanced. And for him to get those guys coached up really well and to get them playing on the same page, I think can't be overstated. They had the best defense, and he coached the best defense in like the last 15 years in 2018, like one of the, you know what I'm saying? Like he's a guy that does a great job. And the other thing I wanted to point out, which I think is extremely important, is that like these guys do well when they have good personnel, right? And so like I think Dallas' defense is good, but I think Vic Fangio with the personnel in Philly is going to be an absolute nightmare. Like I just think like the way they play their 3-4 base structure, so 3 defensive linemen, kind of those stand-up edge players, and I'm like, oh, they just brought in Bryce Huff. They brought that kid in from Nolan Smith from Georgia, who's like this perfect stand-up end. They've got Sweat there. They've got these great interior players. They've got, another thing that they've done is they've kind of prioritized the role of that nickel player in the defense, and they go out and they draft, maybe the best nickel player in Cooper DeJean. Obviously, it's got to pan out for him, but I was just like, if there was a guy that is going into the best situation that kind of fits what he likes to do, I mean, Vic Fangio is really high on the list. So from a paper standpoint, I'd probably say, it's Zimmer. Fangio, I think the fit there is so natural for him. I think Shane Bowen does a great job, again, kind of from this Romeo Cornell background where it's quarters. We got a lot of split safety. We do a great job being aggressive to the football, coaching kind of an identity. And then I love what Joe Witt does. I love it. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's elements that all these guys do a really good job of. And I do think the fit here is really nice. I just wonder about the personnel here for Joe Witt. I just think like the personnel in Philly, like when you look at it, it's like and again, he's a smart man, like Vic Fangio. He's going to pick a job where the personnel is going to be the best for him. And I just felt like there couldn't be a more natural fit from a personnel standpoint. and then you look at Zimmer and what he does schematically. I don't know. It basically, long story short, it's tough to kind of say this guy's better than this guy. I think it comes down ultimately to the personnel and buy-in. And so if you're going to rate it on personnel, you say Philly. If you're going to rate it on buy-in, I think Dan and Joe are going to do a great job creating buy-in here. So really, it's kind of up in the air, but schematically, they all do stuff that's really fun to watch and really innovative. And so I think like defense in this division next year is going to be pretty fun to watch.
That is really insightful and terrible for a rankings show.
I know. It's just like I'd probably, if I had a gun to my head, I'm going to say Vic Fangio just because this fit is so good. I'll say Zimmer as 2. I'll say Joe Witt just because I trust Dan and I trust what that defense did in Dallas. And I do think he's going to maximize the personnel here, specifically the secondary. And then Shane Bowen, partially because the defense, while always very good wherever he's been, is a little bit vanilla and a little bit kind of in the Patriots way of like, we're going to game plan each week for you, and I think that can be really challenging to be successful at, especially if you
don't have the personnel. Like, I don't have the horses to do anything really well in New York right now defensively.
That defensive line I'm excited about, but I do think, how does the secondary handle that stuff? They have the linebackers to do it, but I do think, how does that kind of matriculate and progress to that back end group, which played basically man exclusively last year. So now you're going to be asked to do a lot more different stuff. How does that pan out for you?
And maybe it does. Maybe the secondary is way better than we know, and they just were playing bad coverages last year. And we know that they were exposed because Wink, that's what he does. He's like, we're gonna expose our secondary, but it comes with a reward upside. There's a risk reward there that was more skewed towards the risk than perhaps anybody else in football the last 2 decades. The way Wink Martindale does it. But yeah, it's tough because. Yeah. Witt's the first time, to try to add some wrinkles here. The one, not concerning, but like the one thing that is the biggest unknown with Joe Witt Jr. is he's never been a play caller before. Mm-hmm. And so at least Zimmer, Bowen, Fangio, like they've been play callers. They've had the live bullets. They know, okay, in this situation, I've been here before. I want this. I have some kind of memory bank of experience.
Sure.
And for Joe Witt Jr., he doesn't have that yet. Certainly when you're a position coach, like you're thinking about that stuff. You're kind of mentally preparing. You're anticipating, hey, what am I going to have to do for my part of this based off the upcoming play call? So you're guessing, but it's different when you got to actually do it in the game. So that is one thing that feels worth pointing out, but still, even then, like, I think they're going to have great game plans. I think they're going to be extraordinarily prepared. Both as a staff, and Joe Witt will be prepared for all those situations to call the right plays. And he'll have Dan as a resource, obviously, is about as good as you can get in terms of what he's done as a defensive play caller over his entire career. But also they'll have the players prepared. And that, putting Witt 3rd or 4th feels like silly because then you're like, he's the worst. And it's like, yeah, that's a relative term. I tend to agree with you, though. I think Zimmer and Fangio are probably 1A, 1B. Mm-hmm. And then if that creates then the next person being 3rd, you have like 3A, 3B, Bowen and Witt probably.
Yeah. And again,
that's kind of how I see it.
I think the cool thing about all these guys is Fangio, his defense was a top 10 defense last year in Miami. They were 3rd in sacks, and he came into that on like a year, you know what I'm saying? Which is pretty impressive. And for him to elevate that group in 1 year, obviously I was with him in Chicago, and what he was able to do with those guys there is always just been crazy impressive to me. And again, on paper, when you watch it, it's a very similar defense, quite frankly, to what Philly ran last year, to what Washington ran last year. But it's just, you can tell the way he coaches, you know what I mean? The way he understands his defense, the way guys rally to certain things, the way they check, the way they communicate. It's really well done. And like I said, the Zimmer thing is interesting because I think on paper he does like the coolest stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like when you watch Instagram and you're watching all these different offensive trick plays and stuff, and they're like, man, I want to put that in my offense. He does that with defense. And you can tell sometimes guys are a little bit confused. They're not always the right spot, but they play hard for him. He's a good motivator. I think another thing to point out, he hasn't been coaching for, what is it? It's been a minute now. You know what I mean?
It's been a couple years, yeah.
So I think that's another thing that I would just be a little bit cautious about. I like what I saw from him in 19. I like what Vic does. And again, I like Shane Bowen. And I think you have to give Shane Bowen a little bit of credit, honestly, because talk about making something out of nothing. And I think when you look at what they did in Tennessee last year, like there wasn't a lot there. And for him to kind of
they've been
make
bleeding
that
personnel for a couple of years.
Yeah, make that group productive. I think he deserves a lot of credit. But again, of the groups, this was the hardest one for me to kind of parse out because I think they're all very talented. I think they all do some really innovative stuff. It's just about kind of your flavor and then how they end up settling in with the head coach, with the offense that's going to support them, and then with the personnel. And I think that's why I got to give the edge to Vic because I just think that personnel is going to, and again, this is another reason to give Vic some credit, is like, I know Vic's going to come in and be like, Sirianni, do not talk to me about anything defensively. Like, I'm doing my thing. And I think there is something to be said for having a strong-willed defensive or offensive coordinator that says, this is my vision. Don't mess with it. You can give input, but might not always take it. Like, this is my vision. And I think that's something that I know for sure he'll do. I know for sure Zimmer will do. I have questions about Bowen going up with Dayball because Dayball is such a strong personality. Like, how much input is he going to impart there? And again, like, that's why this is all these rankings are so fun to do, because it's like, it's on paper what they do, how they interact with these other groups, and how they interact with the personnel.
For sure. All right. That is our show for this week, or for today, I should say. We got one more holiday mailbag special for you coming on Thursday, but we need questions for said mailbag. Can't do a mailbag if the bag is empty. We need the mail to go in the bag, if you will. And by that, I mean tweets and Instagram DMs. So if you're more of an Instagrammer, hit Logan at Logan_Paulson82. If you prefer to tweet in your questions, you can go at Craig Hoffman on Twitter. You can also go to hoffmanshow.com. There's a contact link, and you can send me an email that way if you are like, I don't do social media. Why do you guys always gear everything? We don't. Just go to hoffmanshow.com, contact Paige, and be like, mailbag question. Here we go. And if your question's good, we'll answer it on Thursday. So there you go. In the meantime, make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more things to listen to, may I suggest, humbly, the Hoffman Show podcast, the radio show that I do on the Team 980, 5 days a week, most weeks, 3 this week because it's a holiday. And every hour, every minute of every show is available for you on demand. We do a ton of Commander stuff, but also if you want your Wizards fix, et cetera, definitely recommend checking that out. For Logan, I am Craig, and we will see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a... All right, that from the Take Command podcast, that man talking there at the end, telling you all the things that you can listen to, sounds very, very smart. But we're also going to rely on his football knowledge and football knowledge of super producer Anthony Haney. Anthony, are you ready, after hearing Logan and I break down all the defensive coordinators, to rank the defenses in the NFC East?
I was born ready, Craig.
Excellent. So we're going to do that next. And I will say, Logan and I recorded that holiday mailbag this morning. It'll be out tomorrow. But y'all sent in so many questions, or the podcast listeners, some of which are also you, the radio listener. I sent in so many questions. We have leftovers. So leftover mailbag at 6:30 here on the Hoffman Show. What a day, what a day. We're rolling with you on the Team 980. 10 minutes right now. What if I told you the number one pick in next year's draft was at the DC sports team's game this past weekend? Would you be like, that's a big deal? Say the number one pick in next year's NFL draft started attending Commanders games, or the number one pick in next year's NBA draft started going to Wizards games? Well, it happened for one DC sports team this weekend. We'll talk about it coming up in 10 minutes. Right now, though, Anthony, so we really struggle to rank the defensive coordinators in the NFC East. We actually really like or are impressed on some level by all of them. Fangio and Zimmer, a long time successful DCs. Both guys have had head coaching shots because of how good they were as DCs. Joe Witt Jr., first-time play caller. Shane Bowen, a bit of a mixed bag in Tennessee, but mostly was impressive as a roster deteriorated. That wasn't his fault. But when you add in the talent levels across the board in the NFC East, it becomes very difficult to rank the defenses as well. But I think it's easier than just the DCs. So if we take into account everything, and we did this with the offenses in the NFC East yesterday. If you missed it, you can check the Hoffman Show podcast. Definitely was fun to parse out. But if you take the defenses, talent, and coaching into account, who do you think the best defense is in the NFC East?
I mean, on paper, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And they also, I think
I don't think I agree with you. But go ahead. Make your case. Make your case.
You're going to go Eagles?
I'll tell you in a second. Make your case.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say Dallas has the best talent. I mean, you have up front on the defensive line, you have Michael Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, both game changers. And then in the back end, you have Trayvon Diggs, and you also have Deron Bland's coming off a season where he led the league in pick sixes, was also a Pro Bowler. So I think you look at that, you know, their linebackers are fairly young. Their safeties, they've been there for years.
Great safety play for sure.
Yeah, so I think if you just look at, you know, the experience that they have, the fact that they have high impact players that can also score off those turnovers, I think you got to take all that into account and just, you know, lean on that.
So here's my counter to Dallas. As much as I think Dallas is very good. I don't want to knock them down too much. It's more about what I think another team can do. But if I were to pull apart the Dallas argument, part of what's made them so dominant the last 3 years when DQ was there was Dan's specialty is finding out what guys do really well and accentuating it and hiding their weaknesses. And I don't know that Mike Zimmer is as good at that. Now, Mike Zimmer is good at a lot of stuff. Mike Zimmer is one of the more accomplished and revolutionary. I mean, the double A gap blitz and the third down blitz package stuff that he has done over the course of his career is, you know, in many ways like what Fangio has done for coverages. Like a lot of people use Mike Zimmer's stuff. He had the innovation to see it. Who knows what else he's going to come up with? He's been out of the league for a couple years since he left Minnesota. So what has he been working on, studying, cooking up? You know, I'm sure he's been an advisor and doing some other stuff. So I just wonder, is Micah Parsons in Mike Zimmer's defense as effective as he was in Dan Quinn's? Is Deron, and especially on the back end, right? Those safeties were used very specific ways. Deron Bland, Trayvon Diggs, like they understood these guys are ball hawks. We're going to let them roam, and we have to have coverage, and at times they're going to get beat. And so they called the game that way, and they picked their spots, and they did a really good job of coaching those guys up. I don't know that Zimmer and the remaining staff in Dallas is up to that task. Meanwhile, I look at what Vic Fangio's got to work with in Philadelphia. Fangio's a guy that's thrived on these amorphous coverage structures, using fronts in certain ways, and like having some of these, we think of like the star player, like Brandon Staley had it when he was the DC with the Rams, and it was Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, he took that same concept to LA. It didn't work out quite as well, but that was the whole reason he got hired, was because it's like, can we do the same thing with Derwin James? But there's plenty of Vic Fangio disciples around. And it's a really complex defense in a lot of ways. Like Jack Del Rio tried to run a version of it, and they didn't communicate well enough here, and Jack didn't, and his staff didn't coach it well enough, and it was a disaster. But Fangio's the guy who knows how to do it the best because he's the guy who invented the thing. And I think when you look at the pieces they have in Philadelphia, they're super intriguing. I mean, up front, they got studs, and they have, a 3-4 base with a true nose tackle in they've got the great, 3 tech and Jalen Carter if they want to line up at a 4 down, which they'll be in plenty. But 3 down, He's still effective as a 5 tech on the edge. What's his name? Jordan Davis. Big hog molly in there as a 1 technique or as a nose if you want to play true 3-4. If you want these stand-up rush ends, guys like Nolan Smith, who they drafted a couple years ago, Bryce Huff, who they bring in free agency, like they've got the front to do it. And then you look at what they did in the draft, and it's going to come down to can they get these young guys in the secondary to ball out. But Kenyon Mitchell, like, fits, and Cooper DeJean is like the ultimate Vic Fangio type piece. Who knows if he's ready to go week 1 at like a high level, but there's a chance. And so I think between the fit, like the caliber of the personnel in Philadelphia with what they've got up front, the caliber of coaching and the fit of personnel and scheme, I would probably say Philadelphia is the best in the division with Dallas behind them. And then we talk about Washington and New York, 3rd and 4th.
All right, quick question on your Micah Parsons, like whether or not he's going to be the same Micah Parsons he was in Dan Quinn's defense. I just feel like Micah Parsons he's in the upper echelon of
for sure
players on the defensive side of the ball that will impact the game no matter like what scheme they're. I think that goes to like Aaron Donald, that goes to like a TJ Watt. I think he's in that caliber. So I don't necessarily like question whether or not he's still going to be dominant. And the fact that he's on the field, and I feel like we have this conversation all the time. Who's the best player on the team when it comes to like the NBA?
Different sports.
I mean, sort of kind of is, but
yeah,
again,
there's 11 dudes with a chance to do something on one, and
but
5
he's on
dudes.
the defensive line. That itself.
I get it, but like you got to remember, some of the production comes because he's that damn good, and they would put him over whoever was the worst. Like part of Micah Parsons' superpower, which is the thing that Dan Quinn specializes in, is he can line up anywhere. He's a rare talent. But if you just line him up on the edge, will he still be a 12, 13, 14 sack guy? Probably, if he's a pure defensive end edge rusher.
Yeah.
But to get to 18, can we not line him up over a center? Can we line him up over a guard who's not very good and is not used to that kind of pass rusher? And Dan did that stuff. Now, Mike Zimmer has, I think some of the double A gap blitz looks, like Micah Parsons will return to being an off-ball linebacker so that he can blitz from there. It would be insane for them not to use him in some of that stuff where you generate pressure typically with lesser players. Well, if you have a player who can do it like Parsons can, it changes the whole equation. So I think that they'd be silly not to use some of that, but I don't think that they're as good. They're like, that is Quinn's specialty. There's almost no one in the league who's as good at it. And so can quit. Like, that's one of the things that I think separates, what I think Washington can do and why I put them 3rd over New York. Is I trust Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr., that philosophy to take Deron Payne and John Allen and put them places that they haven't lined up before, but that are going to be advantageous for this defense, and they have the personnel to do it. Like Cleveland Ferrell is big enough to line up inside if you need him to get Deron Payne outside and switch up the matchups on a 3rd down situation and play really, be effective and generate pressure. We're seeing what they do with Jamin Davis. And then I think the back end will be a lot better because of those guys. And I think the back end talent here is simply better than it is in New York. That ultimately, what to me is why New York is 4th, is because I just think their back end's not very good.
Yeah, the back end is trash. I mean, they do have Xavier McKinney, but outside of him,
I mean, we'll see what Banks can do, but
he's coming off a rough rookie season as well.
It wasn't great.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely the Commanders 3rd, Giants last. I do like the Giants front 7 though. But
their front 7's nasty. Their linebacker play is really good, and their front's real good. They probably have a better front 7 than. Well, it's pretty close. Them and Washington. We'll see how good. They have a better D line. Washington's got better linebackers, but it's actually pretty close. Like New York's linebacking core is probably the 2nd best in the division.
Yeah,
so,
I just trust Joe Witt though a little bit more.
I do too. I definitely do too. All right, so that's our rankings. I've got Philly 1. Ant has Dallas 1. We've got the other one 2nd, if you will. Washington 3rd. New York 4th. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Paige Bueckers, star at UConn, has made a habit of being here in D.C. Wait a second. There's a really good chance the Mystics have the number 1 pick next year, and they actually might have 2 lottery picks. So do they need to do whatever it takes to get Paige Bueckers? She already knows the city. We'll talk to an expert. Sabrina Merchant joins us to discuss that next on the Hoffman Show. Joined now by Sabrina Merchant, who is, of course, covering women's basketball for The Athletic. She's been on the show before. She's great. And we have a wonderful excuse, Sabrina, to have you back on the show, which is that Paige Bueckers, the presumptive number one pick in next year's WNBA draft, was at the Mystics game. And I was like, wait a second. If that's something we'd talk about if the top quarterback was at a Commanders game or a top pick was at a Wizards game. We should talk about it here because it's a big deal. Of course, she's there to support her former teammate at UConn, Aaliyah Edwards, but she also is great friends with AZ Fudd, her teammate at UConn, who's from the DC area. Paige has been here a lot, and that way it's not a big deal. But it also is not nothing. And I'm just curious, like when someone like Paige Bueckers shows up at a WNBA game around WNBA circles, or people are like, oh, that's interesting, or is it just like, oh, Paige is out there gallivanting, having a good time because that's what Paige Bueckers does in the offseason?
You know, as much fun as it would be for it to be the former, I think it's more of the latter. You know, with women's basketball, players stay at school for 4 years, so they build relationships with a lot of, players who end up going pro. And not only has Paige been at Washington Mystics games to support Aaliyah Edwards, as you mentioned, but she was also at a Minnesota Lynx game recently supporting Dorothy Juhász. She even had a Lynx Juhász jersey on, that she took pictures with, her former UConn teammate there after that game. So I think, it's kind of just par for the course. Paige is a big basketball fan. I mean, I've even seen her in Los Angeles at Angel City games. Like, she just likes taking live sports during the summer when she's not busy playing for UConn. So unfortunately, as much fun as it would be to think that Paige is maybe scouting out a potential location for her 2025 season, I'm not sure that's entirely the case.
Oh, rats, ruining all our fun. Paige did the double this weekend, as did I. I was like, oh, Paige is just following me around. Mystics and then Spirit. She was in the suite that Aaliyah Edwards has taken quite a liking to at Audi Field on Saturday night. As we talk about Paige as a prospect, though, obviously the Mystics, they win last night against Los Angeles, which doesn't help their cause. The Sparks now firmly in the lottery mix with Cam Brink going down, and they're a couple years away probably from being really good with Brink presumably coming back next year and Rakia Jackson, and then we'll see what they do in the offseason. But the Mystics are certainly going to be in that lottery buzz. They also have the Atlanta Dreams first-round pick next year. Is Bueckers the kind of prospect that, obviously, if the Mystics were to win the lottery, they could just take her number one. But let's say they wind up with like the second and the fourth pick or something like that. Like, what level of prospect is Bueckers where the Mystics might want to give up multiple picks to go and try to get her? Or is it the kind of thing where there's no price that a team could pay for Paige Bueckers, a la there's no price that Indiana would have taken for the rights to draft Caitlin Clark this year? There's no amount of first-round picks you could have traded for them to move off of that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the marketability of Caitlin Clark was something unlike anything I've really ever seen. Just what she's meant to the Indiana Fever as a business proposition. I think, that's probably why you couldn't trade any number of picks to get her. Although, funny you should mention like 2 and 4. That's exactly what I thought the Sparks should have offered Indiana in that situation to see if that would have worked to get, the number one pick in Caitlin Clark. But I do think that she is the type of prospect just in terms of what Washington needs going forward and how well she projects to translate at the pro level that you would consider trading 2 picks, even if it is 2 lottery picks to get Paige Bueckers. And just where Washington is in their current team building process, like you have Aaliyah Edwards going forward, you have Shakira Austin, though the health is a little bit of a concern. You really would love a nice young guard to slot in with them. And I think just that positional fit makes so much sense. So, 2 high picks presumably coming for Washington in this upcoming draft. I do think that, it's something you should consider moving up to get a player like Paige, even though it doesn't really seem to be Mike Tebow's wheelhouse to trade up. If anything, they traded down last time. There was a great generational guard prospect in Ryan Howard in 2022, so they could get Shakira Austin. But I think Paige is in a different class.
So, as Sabrina Merchant is our guest, women's basketball reporter for The Athletic, we know this year's class was obviously so deep, and we're seeing it play out with how this group is playing on the floor this season. How deep is next year's class behind Bueckers?
I think it's a really good class, but I don't think it's necessarily of the, the level that we saw in 2024. For all the talk that there was about Caitlin Clark, I think Cam Brink and Camila Cardoso are both like excellent front court prospects as well. Even, you've seen how Rakia Jackson and Angel Reese and even Aaliyah Edwards have played out the start of their rookie seasons. Like, I think there's a bigger gap between Paige and the remaining prospects than there was this year between Caitlin and the remaining prospects. Not to say that like Kiki Hoffman or Sanaya Rivers or, a whole bunch of seniors that Notre Dame has aren't going to turn into excellent pros. But I do believe that there's the number one pick is just so much more valuable than any of the other picks. I am excited to see what the rest of the class turns out to be. It's just, if you're banking on one rookie to really help take your franchise to the next level, I think Paige Bueckers is the only one in this class who you feel comfortable in having that feeling about.
When you look ahead at the next 3 drafts, you've got Paige this year, you have Juju Watkins presumably the year after, and then Kiki Rice the year after that. And there's some other players that we could mention as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave those names to you, but those seem to be the top 3 picks in the next 3 drafts. Do you have strong feelings? This is a very sports radio question, Sabrina, but do you have strong feeling on which one you would rather have of those 3 if you could magically roll dice or something and wind up the number 1 pick in any of those drafts?
Yeah, the history of UConn players in the WNBA makes me pretty confident that Paige will turn out, to be an excellent pro. And there's just, to me, less risk with her, although obviously the health concerns factor in because she missed a season and a half of her college career thus far. But assuming she plays another full year and, comes into the WNBA after playing 2 consecutive seasons at UConn, I feel pretty confident in her going forward. But that 2027 draft, my goodness, you already mentioned Juju Watkins. I'm not even sure at this point that I would take Juju Watkins number 1 in 2027 because You've got, South Carolina's Mylasia Full-Wiley, who may be just the most incredible prospect I've ever seen in person. Just the things that she can do on a basketball court, her athleticism, I truly have never really seen anything like that. So that 2027 draft is going to be something special. I mean, we've been talking about this freshman, now sophomore class, just what a standard that they set. We've truly never seen anything like it at the collegiate level. And, Hannah Hidalgo, Madison Booker, Tessa Johnson had a great tournament for South Carolina, especially in that Final Four. There's just so many players who could really be impact players in that 27 draft, obviously headlined by Juju Watkins, but that's the year where, that's when I'd want to have a number 1 pick. If there's a team building situation that potentially allowed you to have a down year in 2026, it might not be such a terrible thing.
Yeah. As far as the Mystics go, how has Shakira looked so good earlier this season, and then all of a sudden it's like she's day to day. Well, day to day has turned into a month here where she hasn't played basketball. How do you think they are looking at their future with the player that was supposed to be the centerpiece now having a serious, on some level, health concern? And I don't know whether they're just being ultra conservative. I don't know what the deal is. I've asked around and I haven't been able to get any information. I don't know how much poking around you've done and what you've been able to learn here. But how different do you look at the Mystics, at least from the outside, with what's happened to Shakira Austin this year, even if Aaliyah Edwards has looked fantastic in her rookie season?
Yeah, it definitely puts a little bit of a damper on the future, considering, like you said, how good she has looked when she's been healthy. Even last season before the hip injury knocked her out at the end of the year, a lot of really strong moments. I'm one of the 2 voters who voted Shakira Austin for Rookie of the Year back in 2022, so I've been enamored of her potential for a very long time. My instinct was that they were slow playing it at the start of the year. Just, this is going to be a rebuilding year for the Mystics. We have Aaliyah Edwards. We have, Emily Angsler off the bench. Let's see what Stephanie Tolson was spacing wise. There are other options we have in terms of the front court that we don't need to play Shakira Austin right now. But the fact that the injury report hasn't really changed is a little concerning. I don't think I'm going to be dramatically concerned until we come back from the Olympic break and she still isn't available to go full bore. But for now, I think it's more of, we're not trying to lose games. We're not explicitly trying to win games here as the Washington Mystics. So if that means that we get to take a look at other players like an Aaliyah Edwards, like an Emily Angsler in Shakira Austin's stead, then it's not such a terrible thing.
Sabrina Merchant, women's basketball writer at The Athletic, our guest here for another minute or 2 on The Hoffman Show. I know you and your colleague and our friend of the show as well, Ben Pickman, debated this on The Athletic site, how or who should make the WNBA All-Star team. Announced last night, of course, they'll take on Team USA in Phoenix for the game itself. Ultimately, how do you think the combination of the fan and media and player voting did on naming the All-Stars not on the U.S. Olympic roster?
Yeah, so I think I only really have two major exclusions that I'm kind of surprised by, and it ultimately may end up not even mattering because they're both members of the Australian national team and wouldn't be able to play in that game as it is because they'll be called over for duty before the Olympics start, and that's Ezzy Magbegor and Alana Smith. I just thought they've had really excellent seasons for two teams that are in the top four of the WNBA standings, and it's kind of surprising to me that neither one was selected, just considering like how good they are on both ends of the floor and how much success their teams have had. So that was pretty shocking to me that both of those players didn't make it, especially because Ezzy was an All-Star last year, and there tends to be like this inertia effect, right? When a player's already been an All-Star, coaches see them as an All-Star and just keep voting them into the pool over and over again. So I was somewhat surprised by Ezzy not being on that list and Alana Smith, and then also like Jelani Hamilton I think has been great for New York, but as like the fourth option on New York, I understand why those numbers are a little bit harder to come by, and that's probably why statistically she didn't have the profile that a default all-star might, but, obviously hard to say that there are any like players who are not deserving of that honor. And I just think that the roster that it was assembled for Team WNBA is so fun. Obviously, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese being teammates, getting to play against Team USA, like the storylines just write themselves. And Nneka Ogwumike, Rike Gumbawale, a bunch of players who have been in the running to play for Team USA at one point or another and are not, and get this opportunity to stick it a little to the Team USA roster is always going to be a good time.
Yeah, I think Kevin Pelton wrote that Ezzy's case is like the worst, statistically speaking,
the most egregious snub of all time.
Yeah, it's like I think it might have even been more like worst both W and NBA. Like it's one of the worst misses. But as you said, at least it's
shocking,
not,
honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been awesome. I will ask this for the casual listener who knows Angel, knows Caitlin, maybe is watching a little bit, but isn't locked in day to day, but listens to a generic sports talk radio show, which I hate to admit that we are. Angel and Caitlin making it legit based off their performances, or is that powered by obviously the voting itself? It's in part powered by the fan voting and their popularity. But if this was purely a merit based case, do they both belong on the All-Star team?
I mean, I think you can make strong cases for both of them, probably more so for Caitlin just because the guard pool is a little bit weaker than the front court pool, and there aren't a lot of, true point guards that are doing what Caitlin is doing. I mean, other than, honestly, because Chelsea Gray's been injured for most of the season, you could argue that Caitlin's had a better impact than any point guard south of Sabrina Ionescu. So I do believe that, that was a totally legitimate case. Like I mentioned with Ezzy and Alana Smith, they would have been on my ballot ahead of Angel Reese. So a little surprising that, Angel made it ahead of them, especially because she was part of the coaches pool, whereas Caitlin made it from the fan media player vote. But no, I don't think it's disingenuous by any means. Angel's obviously been really productive on the glass, had a positive impact on the Chicago Sky, who's been better than expected, challenging for a playoff spot and what was projected to be another rebuilding year for Chicago. So yeah, I think both of those are perfectly fine choices. And, this isn't exhibition. It's going to be a good time. And I think having those two on the team is generally good for the WNBA.
Yeah, for sure. It should be fun. I'm waiting for Steph Curry to announce that he's going to return serve on Sabrina and he's going to participate in W All-Star Weekend. That's the only thing that we're missing right now, Sabrina.
It's really too bad that this is happening right before the Olympics, and Steph is probably wrapped up in Team USA duty himself because, we really need a rematch on Sabrina's home court, so to speak.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, for everything women's basketball, Sabrina Merchant is a great go-to in The Athletic. Sabrina, always great to catch up. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too, Craig.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in about 15 minutes, Clinton Yates and I will talk about James Wood's debut with the Nationals. But we're going to bring Clinton in now to discuss what is still probably the biggest story, at least, or one of the biggest stories in sports. It's kind of a weird day for our quote-unquote top story. But the debate rages on about Greg Berhalter's future with U.S. Soccer. So let's talk about it, shall we? It's today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
The face you see on television, also in a box, talking about sports. You watch him on Around the Horn. You can also listen to him in your earballs for ESPN Daily. It's Clinton Yates. What's up, dude?
Nothing much. We're working hard right up until the holiday, bro. For those of you who don't know, behind the scenes, a lot going on today. All right. Midweek. Here's one of these things that I have a thing about, Craig. The days of the week that certain holidays are on. Thursday, an okay day for Independence Day. Friday, typically better because you can take the day off before. You don't waste your Mondays. I have a big thing about wasting Mondays on holiday weekends. Thursday makes it just awkward enough where it's like, oh, is anybody working for the entire week? I don't know, but we are. So hello.
Yeah, we got Friday off, so I'm pretty
Nice.
pumped about that. So yeah, Thursday, if your boss gives you Friday off, A+.
A-okay.
Thursday, if your boss doesn't, kind of sucks.
Total F. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. We should do that's a good June topic or / July topic. Maybe next week we'll debate best days for holidays to fall on, because Juneteenth, which we actually got off this year, that was on a Wednesday, and I'm not gonna lie, the two-day weeks, not bad.
We is doing a lot of heavy lifting on who got that off there, Gregory. I'm
Look,
just saying.
I almost didn't say it because I was like, this could open up a can of worms, and I don't want to. I was told I did not have to come to work on Wednesday a couple weeks ago.
We as in Americans got
Yes.
the day off.
Americans got the day off I meant at our company, but I don't want to go further down that path because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, including, and most importantly, myself. Heck of a day. It's not Friday, but the last day of the week would be a heck of a day for someone named Craig to get fired. The point is, Clinton Yates, that Greg Berhalter is also trying to not get fired. Unfortunately, all his work is done. The U.S. men's national team's soccer coach will be subject of the review, whatever that they want to do there for U.S. soccer. To me, this seems like we're going to do a review. We've already decided we're firing him. We're not going to do it on the 4th of July. We'll wait till next week. Is there any other way this should play out? Is there any other way this does play out?
I think that the only other way this doesn't play out is if somebody, frankly, doesn't want the job. That is a very real possibility in this scenario. Because, look, Jesse Marsh, who a lot of people thought was at the front runner position for the USMNT gig, well, he's on a different team. And, well, that team actually advanced in this tournament. And, well, they're also co-hosts of the World Cup. So, unfortunately, you can't necessarily just throw a gob of money at him and expect him to walk away, because that would be despicable on a lot of levels.
Yeah, he took the job like 2 months ago in Canada.
Exactly, and he's done a fantastic job. So that's out. The question is, are you going to go somewhere outside of the typical coaching pipelines, if you will? Is there a non-American that you can, again, throw the bag at and maybe get? Maybe. But then again, if that can't happen, what's your other option? After you came back from that awkward scenario where his contract expired, they effectively pulled the team publicly, which I thought was an asinine idea in terms of how you're trying to operate this from a PR standpoint. And he comes back and they continue to flounder. Like, at some point, well, if you're this far along in the dance with the girl you brought, well, it's a little difficult. Now, personally, I agree with the methodology of every World Cup cycle, you should probably have a new coach. That's a personal opinion. But that also is built on the idea that between cycles, you were building as you were supposed to be anyway. Blowing it up at this point within that strategy might not make a lot of sense, Craig. And I think my larger thing here is this. And shouts to my man, Jonathan Tannenwald, who writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer, one of the most foremost minds on soccer in this country that we have as journalists are concerned. He makes the point that, bro, the coach's job isn't to develop the team. The coach's job is to pick the best 11 and try to win the tournaments or the qualifiers that are in front of you. Now, because of the way USSF works and because of the way this entire system operates, those things are not as separated as they probably should be. But overall, as much as I think Berhalter needs to be replaced, Gregory, I don't necessarily know that I blame him for the position that he's in.
So I will counter your Jonathan Tannenwald with the Washington Post's own Stephen Goff, which in his column, he said, on national teams, the player pools don't change, the coaches do. Because ultimately, the player pool is what it is, and we have to determine if the coach is getting the most out of the player pool. And that, to me, is the ultimate reason why Berhalter's got to go, is we have 6 years of this dude not maximizing the player pool. And I realize they've won some Nations Leagues.
Stop it. How do you know he's not necessarily maximizing the player pool is the larger discussion here. And Goff, I know, I respect. But here's the issue that we have to come to terms with, Gregory. Are we sure the player pool is that good? And whose fault is that?
Well, there's a couple of things there. One, I'm pretty sure this is the best pool. I don't know about the golden generation thing. I think we're still like, it sucks that we're hosting in 2026, not 2030, because a lot of these dudes are like 20 and 21 years old. And by 2030, if they develop the way they should, which is to Tannenwald's point, on the cup or the club teams they play with, not the national team coaches, we could have a team that's like pretty damn, like not just like, oh, this is a nice American team. Like we could have a legitimate contender in 2030. They are, for like a quarterfinal, semifinal, probably not to win the whole thing, but that's on the table with, Cade Sullivan, the kid out of Philly who's coming up, and, he's going to be playing for Manchester City by 2030. Gio Reyna, we'll see where he goes. Like he's still 22 years old. So there's a lot of that. But I think this is also more to the current point. We got to find out if this player pool is good or if it's the coach. Like part of the reason you fire Berhalter is because you get someone else in there. And if the player pool is still not good, then we've realized, okay, well, it's the player problem. But I don't think Greg Berhalter's so good as a coach that you can't take that risk.
That operates on the presumption that the player pool by default is at a quality that we assume it's going to be just because they're Americans. That's the issue with this, Craig. There's no world in which there's any reason to believe that anybody is underachieving if we're being honestly frank based on any real track record. There is none. I'm sorry. There are tons of Copa America or, even Gold Cup trophies that are out there proving that this nation should be blasting through World Cup titles or anything close to that? No, there are not. So the assumption that they're not maximizing what they have is one that operates on blind faith, to be quite frank, based on, let's just say, a game 12 years ago in a World Cup. Like, come on, man. That's where we're talking about here, Craig, is that you're like, look, all right, perhaps, just perhaps, this idea of development that everybody claims should be producing the top level of soccer player on earth just isn't. It's clear that it's not. And
that's a
okay.
larger, I definitely think like one part of the larger discussion, and Matt Crocker and his team have already talked about this. Like there needs to be a change in how U.S. soccer operates from the top down to the youth levels, that like other great footballing nations that have developed, and great football clubs, for instance, like Barcelona. In a book called Soccernomics that one Clint Yates recommended to me, they write about this, how Barcelona plays the same formation, the same style, the same coaching points from their youth academies to their senior team. That way players can develop up through the system. And they know, when I put on a Barcelona shirt, this is how we play. And there needs to be that on some level, but that's a multi-year project for U.S. soccer. I think the other part of this, though, is like, you have to just be a soccer person at some point, like Matt Crocker is, and Oguchi Onyewu, one of the VPs, who's legend of the U.S. national team, but is like
to Gucci.
coached and been a front office person and played all over Europe. Like these guys who are soccer lifers, what do we do in soccer world? We don't just look at the results, we rate the performance. And the performances have been pretty mediocre to bad under Berhalter. Like you can't just look at a game where you're facing Uruguay in a do or die situation and they create 3 chances. Like that's not good enough. And that has been who he has been the entire time. And at some point, if you're saying like, hey, Greg, you have this plan to develop and change the performance, You've had 6 years, bro, and it's the same stuff. So at some point, you have to go, what the status quo isn't good enough. Let's try something else, even if something else is the unknown.
Okay, first of all, Gucci Onyewu is a DC legend. For those of you who don't know that, born in the city, went
He's
to
also
high
a personal
school
friend, so
in the burbs, and Gucci is the man. So we're not going to act like he's just some dude that happened to play for the national team for a bunch of years.
No.
He's half the reason why I love the sport and why I believe that the development system could get better, Gregory.
I agree.
This is what I'm saying. So look, if you're going to make this analysis and you say, okay, we've had the same leader for 6 years, but to your previous point, the player pool shouldn't change. Why isn't the player pool changing? Like, coach,
do you think that there are better players out there that are American that can play than a starting 11 full of dudes playing in the top 5 leagues or the top 5 leagues in Europe?
No, what I think is that the expectation of what the level should be of a couple to a handful to 2 handful of dudes that are playing at the top flight, maybe the first competition championship-wise, second in Europe, maybe just aren't the best players in the world. That's a concept that we have to understand is entirely possible. It's not about anything other than achievement in this particular situation. And the question is the U.S. more concerned? Because I honestly don't think that this is a federation that has the bandwidth to do both. You either rebuild and you figure out what you're doing from a ground up level and you just let the chips lie where they may, or you continue to try to scrape off the top of the pay-to-play system that is multi-generational in terms of the years old that it is and what it's produced, and you figure out what you're going to get in between. Taking the expectations of both and trying to split the difference is never going to work unless you get some flash in the pan situation or a coach who can randomly motivate a bunch of guys that have been coming up in the same system their entire lives, and their dads did too, to have a zenith of a tournament. I just don't think that that's real right now. And so that's the large question here. Do you want Berhalter because these guys at the very least like him? And do you want to change the other issues from the bottom up and say, we'll just live with it because we've got a World Cup coming anyway?
I mean, I hear you, but BJ Callahan in the 6 months that he was the head coach, who, by the way, just got hired by Nashville today in the MLS. So you're easy, like, we're going to move Berhalter out. We're going to go back to the other guy who's coached during this cycle. That option is gone, which was nobody's like sexy option, but as an interim might have been good. The performances of the U.S. men's national team while BJ Callahan was the coach, greater than sign any performance under Greg Berhalter in 6 years. And I think that's kind of the point.
Let me ask you this, though. That is the point, which is if they're in the mindset that whatever the plan is, that Greg was the option, then the problem is the plan. In my opinion, the problem is not necessarily Greg. And that's what I'm getting at, is that, like, you can fire Greg, you can sack him, as your people like to say from across the pond, but, like, what does that really solve? And if the players like him anyway, which, to be fair, I think they've all been put in an unfair position asking them during a competition, or rather immediately after a competition, whether or not they like their coach. Come on, guys. Like, that to me is on some level, not exactly journalistic malpractice, but what are you expecting to get from an honest standpoint out of that? It's a catch-22 in the literal sense. You know what I mean? And it's really tricky because there comes an admission point as a program, as a federation, where you have to say, is what we're doing the right thing to do? And do we have the energy to do something different alongside of this as well? I don't think they do.
Counterpoint. Was Jesse Marsh a good hire for Canada 2 months ago?
Separate counterpoint. Does Canada have better actual talent than the U.S. men's national team?
At the top end, Alphonso Davies is the best player in North America, probably.
Thank you, sir. I'll have another. That's
exactly
my point.
The guy who wears
okay.
10
Okay, but, like, fine. Great. So you guys can yell and scream about, whatever. I'm not even going to sing English songs because I don't want to be a jerk, and I don't want to sing German ones either. My point is that point of pride for saying that there is a guy that can do it over there overrides the overall point of pride of simply having a system that might as well be a bunch of no-names from North Carolina and Oklahoma, okay? But no. Can't do it that way. Got to have the American hero first, and the rest develop second. Come on, Gregory. You know that I'm right.
Clearly, if we learned anything from the English, it's that sacking the gaffer is always the correct answer. Sack the gaffer! When we get back, we'll quickly, with Yates, hit James Woods' Nationals debut.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
The Hoffman Show. Clinton Yates sticking with us here on the Team 980. So the first time you ever met James Wood, the Nationals debutante this week, 6'7", ultra skilled, can do everything, was arguably the best player in minor league baseball this season, certainly the best in the national system. He was in high school still. What do you remember about the first time you met James Wood, and how excited were you to hear that this was the week he was getting called up to the bigs for the Nats?
He had just graduated from IMG. He was playing in the Perfect Game All-American Classic in 2020. It was at a yard called Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark, which is the AAA affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Separate discussion. Best AAA ballpark in America. Argue with your mama about that. Now, that
so
game,
good that they moved softball in the Olympics to Oklahoma City.
That game, for people who don't know developmentally, what it is basically the high school game of note in this country. There were various big leaguers who played in that game. I'm forgetting his last name right now, but Brady, who was drafted by the Nats in
Brady House.
The draft before, Brady House. Brady House played in that game as well. Brady House, big as a house, is what I said on the telecast that day when I saw him. Now, at that time, James was like, this is crazy for me to say, but he might have been one of the least developed hitters there. I mentioned Brady House was there. McGuire's kid was there. Tommy Tanks, who hit a home run to freaking win the College World Series dang near it, was in that game and in that home run derby, and I believe won it. James looked like a kid who had learned how to play baseball in high school, but simply had bat-to-ball skills and size that were unmatched. Left-handed side of the plate, he could knock it out of the yard. He was that big. He was that good. The rest of it was kind of like, okay, I can see why this kid is an All-American. However, what's going to happen once he gets into the pros, it's going to be incredible when it does. And guess what, Gregory? It has. He's filled out the frame. His plate approach is one that doesn't just look like a big guy up there hacking. And I'm not trying to use that to denigrate what he was doing before, because that's not fair to a high school kid. But what I'm saying is that there are plenty of dudes up there who are in the various levels of the pro game who are just big guys hacking. That's not uncommon. He seems to see the ball much better than I think that most guys of his size and ilk do, and meets the moment as well, Gregory. You get in your first AB and you lace an oppo single to the other side when you're at home. That's not easy, fam. You know, comes from a good family and more, and I know that's kind of a trite thing to say, but like, he's from PGC, bro. My man has dreads. His name is James Wood. The star ceiling is out of control on this, Gregory, if we're really being honest. Like, think about that. If I'm a kid and I don't know, the Mamie Johnson Little League, which by the way happens to be sending a lovely girls softball team, hopefully, to the regionals next week. If I'm a kid growing up in DC and I see James Wood playing baseball, are you serious? Yes. Get me out on the field. There's as much an element of that in what he's presenting as there is in the actual ball skills that I think cannot be ignored. And what I love so much about the kid handling it so humbly.
Yeah, no, he seems like a kid who's really got his head on straight. We asked Toby Altizer, our colleague here, who does our baseball podcast, Bustin' Loose, earlier this week. I was like, you know, the last two young stars that have come through DC that have had major headlines are Bryce and Juan Soto. Soto burst onto the scene in a very different way than Bryce, who was a known commodity, but both of them, by the time they got to the bigs, and especially for Soto, kind of established his early in his big league tenure. Big personalities. Bryce on and off the field. Soto more of just like the Soto shuffle and the swag that he played with on the field. Wood seems like a pretty soft-spoken guy. He's still a kid, so who knows what he develops into as he just matures as a man, because that's what happens when you become an adult. But like the athleticism, the power, like do you think that star power is there, that he's next in line in that, or is he just going to be like an outstanding player that is like many other outstanding players in Major League Baseball, that their star power is limited?
I think there are two separate things that you're referring to, but they both make sense. The star power is not limited, but I do not think it's next in line. Those are separate to me for a couple different reasons. Juan Soto on a World Series champion winning team. Bryce Harper, face of the nation in terms of youth baseball, on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Not quite the same. Wood is just a guy that played baseball growing up and got picked. He went to IMG. Like, He's from Maryland. Like, this wasn't some situation where everybody was like, oh my God, it's going to work. He just got on the field, and next thing you know, you've got a talent. So I do think that what I'm referring to is in terms of likability, never mind ability. And I think that that's something that the Nats, quite frankly, need to recognize. There's no world in which we're returning to that anything is like Strauss or Bryce. There just isn't. Those were two foundational players in terms of the creation of the franchise, never mind the fan base. That is just kind of a different thing now. So when you look at a CJ Abrams, you look at a James Wood, you even look at a guy like Darren Baker, who's coming up through the system, or a Marquise Grissom Jr. If we're going to talk about brothers that could be stars, that does not necessarily correlate to them meeting whatever ceiling of expectation that either of these other two players had, because the franchise is in a different place entirely. So I'm not saying it's an unfair comparison. I just think they're different things. And so for James, I think he's actually going to be able to grow in a cauldron baseball-wise that allows him to be the player he actually is going to become, and not just fulfill that sort of media requirement of, are you the next guy?
Right. It does feel like, from like a sizzle standpoint, the next guy has a much more higher likelihood of being Dylan Cruz. He was a number 2 overall pick. Like, he's got some name value. Yeah. In the year of the number 2 pick in DC, Clinton, he was the Nationals.
Well, let me tell you this, Craig. Look, James Wood was supposed to play in the Futures game this year. Guess what? He played in a big league game 2 days ago. You're not playing in the Futures game at the All-Star break when you're already in the bigs. And that's fine. I know how they put that team together. I know the guys who do it. But that's what I'm talking about. Ahead of schedule is an understatement in terms of this. So don't force the kid's timeline, all right? He was going to be playing with other minor leaguers in a showcase at the All-Star game. Now, he's not only on the 40-man, he's on the 25-man, sitting in the dugout, starting games, hitting lasers to the opposite field. Come on.
Yeah, and it was cool because on Monday in his debut, not only CJ Abrams playing ahead of him at shortstop, you go one spot further up in the infield onto the pitcher's mound, and who's pitching? Mackenzie Gore.
Love it.
The Juan Soto trade, just straight line.
I was going to say, like,
shortstop,
part of the Soto trade. Like, and if you're one of those people that is constantly keeping up with the proverbial Kardashians in terms of what trade assets are doing after you get rid of them as a franchise, Wood's a pretty nice little, treat within that bucket of what actually came back when you see guys like Soto and the Yankees tearing it up. I mean, look, the kid's a young player. He's from the area. His family is fantastic. By the way, so when I met his mom and dad, we were talking in the lobby at one point. They go, Clinton. I was like, what's up? They go, thanks for saying what's up to our son. I was like, come on. This guy's the biggest brother on the field. Obviously, he's a monster. They were just like, no, you don't understand, man. This means a lot to all of us as a family. And that matters to me personally. I know that I'm not supposed to, cross those streams journalistically, but sometimes that matters. And I like that family. I like that kid. They've always been the kind of people that I think are what a lot of black players need in order to succeed at the top flight.
And I think that's also a testament, because I'm going to embarrass you because you're my friend. That's a testament to the work you do and the stories you tell. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Clinton Yates, everybody, with us most of the time on Fridays, but sometimes Friday is a Wednesday. And so here we are. More Hoffman.
Happy 4th, kiddos.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. We do put the show on YouTube for your viewing pleasure, and one, you can rewind on the Team 980's feed for full episodes, just like you can listen to full episodes on the Hoffman Show podcast feed. We also do put up highlights, like individual interviews, get their own little segment. It's a great way to watch if you want to at home. If you want to throw it up on your smart TV, or you actually enjoy looking at our faces as we talk, because sometimes we do silly stuff, and it's fun to see. And all that stuff, though, is online. And then the other thing about YouTube is you can leave comments on the interviews and the segments and all the stuff. And then at the end of each week, or actually I guess in the middle of each week, 1 week at a time, we comb through all of those and we curate the most interesting ones, and then we present them and our thoughts on them. Like this.
They didn't listen. Yeah! Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
Alrighty then. You can leave your comments in many places. You can leave them at Craig Hoffman, at my page, at the Team 980. And then also we'll get to some topics on the women's sports side of a couple of things. And you can leave comments at Hoffman W Sports for our women's sports coverage. So all the different places for all the things that you like, as curated to your liking as possible. Allow us to dive in, though, Anthony. There were a couple of main topics. One was a lot of comments on Greg Berhalter, the U.S. men's national team coach. A lot of Jonas Valanciunas thoughts. A lot of Denny thoughts. And then we do have to get to some final words, Anthony, on you being banned from Audi Field. So got a lot of comments to get to. Let's dive in. First on Berhalter. Of course, U.S. men's national soccer team lost in the group stages at Copa America. We've done a couple of different segments, including one with Clinton just a little bit ago. That's probably the most debate-heavy one that we've had. So if you want a good debate between me and Yates about Berhalter, check out the podcast or when we post that to YouTube. But we had Greg O'Keefe from The Athletic on. He was really great. And DC's Finest 14 commented, says, men's USA team doesn't have enough talent to keep up with the better teams across the world. Coaching can't fix that. And I thought this reply to that, I always love when the commenters have a good debate amongst each other. And that's what happened in this one, Anthony. Because Poo Poo Jinky 4132.
One more time?
I believe, let me lean in here. Poo Poo Jinky 4132.
Okay, Poo Poo.
What else are you going to change? Just want to keep Berhalter around until we have more talent? Teams have done much better with far less talent. Coaching/staff is the only thing we can realistically change at the moment. I don't know why people are so attached to this fool. He hasn't done anything. He thinks he's going to reinvent the wheel. He's not that guy. And this is kind of my thing and my argument with Berhalter is very simply, yes, this generation of U.S. players is probably overrated. The idea that this is a golden generation, they haven't lived up to that. They have not come together as a team. But that doesn't mean that Berhalter's done a good job either. It's like this year with the Wizards, right? Wes Unseld Jr. was coaching a bad basketball team, but he was coaching them poorly, and so they ultimately decided to move on. And while the record didn't change too much, the performances under Brian Keefe got a lot better. And I think as evidence, I will offer you the 6 months while they were doing this very silly review that landed on them rehiring Greg Berhalter after the World Cup, when BJ Callahan, who was hired today as the coach at Nashville in MLS, when he was in charge, he was the interim, and they performed and played a lot better. They had a win. I believe it was in Nations League. Berhalter comes back. They eventually win the Gold Cup. But like the Gold Cup and Nations League, CONCACAF tournaments right now, the U.S. is far and away the most talented team in CONCACAF, and they barely won those tournaments. They had to scrape by a couple times and they just haven't put on, in pretty much the entire 6 years that Berhalter's been in charge, any sort of performance that makes you go, yeah, this team has it. They're headed the right direction. And so while, yes, Christian Pulisic is an A-level international player. He's a legitimate bona fide star. and they don't have anybody else at that level. Like, there are guys playing at top leagues, like Weston McKennie's at Juventus, etc., and like playing real minutes, but they don't have anybody that's a star on their team in the way Pulisic is in those top leagues. And some of the guys that are playing in the top leagues are barely playing in the top leagues, and they could just as easily be premier MLS players. And they wouldn't be so good that you're like, wow, how is this guy not playing in Europe? Such as Matt Turner. Matt Turner could either be the best goalkeeper in MLS or the worst one in the Premier League. And he's currently the worst one in the Premier League by a number of statistics. And he ultimately was playing for the worst team or one of the worst teams in Nottingham Forest last year. So long story short, like, you can gripe about the players in the player pool all you want, but it's not like Berhalter has anything to stand on as a coach that he's actually done a great job with them. Both things can be true at once, which leads to Soccer USA 87 players overreacting, lack of discipline, lack of identity, no ability to create chances, defensive mistakes, not getting out of an easy group, creating a players council, players deciding who they want to lead. That's all true. There was a players council that was consulted on Berhalter being rehired. Just because you like a coach doesn't mean he's effective. Wes Unseld was a great dude, and I personally like Wes a lot as a human being, and I think he's very smart. It was time for him to go. Sometimes that's pro sports, or in this case, international sports. Fans were correct over 5 years. For over 5 years, what else do you need? The answers are there. And I think, Anthony, the answer is they need a holiday weekend, because you don't want to fire the head coach of the USA on July 4th. I mean, you might want to, but you should probably wait till next week.
Yeah.
So there's that. Reaction rolling in Never Read the Comments. So in our YouTube comments, at Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980, to Jonas Valanciunas' signing. Because I said, I think this is a great signing for the Wizards. Great is a relative term. And I think this comment by Peaceful344, and just when you get a YouTube comment from someone that screen name is Peaceful, you just take a deep breath. Because YouTube comments, well, there's a reason this segment is called Never Read the Comments. They are often not peaceful. But Peaceful344 says, Jonas was also a good vet to Jaren Jackson Jr. when he was at Memphis. He can do the same for Alex Sarr. I think Triple J is a really intriguing, I'm going to use that word, intriguing comp for Sarr. I don't know it's as clean as some people want to make it, because Jackson has actually been a pretty decent three-point shooter for stretches of his career. And Sarr is going to have some big-time development to get there. So, like, in a weird way, like, Triple J is this like 3-and-D kind of guy. He can shoot it a little bit, but he is, pretty athletic. I think is like a roll man. Sarr's bigger, longer, but when he's not fouling the crap out of people, Jaren Jackson is one of the best defensive players in the league, and that is certainly the hope for Alex Sarr. And if Jonas Valanciunas can help him get there, teach him some of the tricks of the trade, that's a pretty valuable signing. Then we got into a big back and forth. This whole kerfuffle, Anthony, was not quite as peaceful, if you will. And it starts off with at FunnyComs326 coming after me. Got personal, Anthony. You got your seatbelt on?
I do. I feel bad for this person.
Here we go. I didn't get personal. You feel bad for me, not for them.
Right. I'm interested.
Whose side are you on?
I'm interested in your response.
Oh, I didn't say anything bad. Okay. I'm trying to be nicer. There was a point today when I was curating these comments, and there was about 6 times that I had something antagonistic typed out, and I deleted it because I'm trying to be better.
That's good. We love growth, Craig.
Typically it doesn't, like, there's no payoff for being a jerk on the internet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to be better about. No, you save being a jerk for the radio segment where you talk about the comments on the internet. That's what this segment's...
Yes.
It's not actually what this segment's about. FunnyComs326 says, I forget that this guy is an apologist for both the Commanders and the Wizards. On what planet does Valanciunas move the needle? Y'all just be talking. Not one. Not a single Valanciunas jersey will be sold. One, I think as a joke, we should buy a Jonas Valanciunas jersey.
And just hang it up in the studio?
I think we're basically required to. You think that's in the budget?
I think if we all put something together,
Here's the thing: if we're just buying it for kicks and giggles, and we're buying it to hang up behind us, we can buy the kids' jersey. It's less expensive.
Great point.
All right. If anybody at the Wizards is listening and wants to save us $1 and get us a Jonas Valanciunas jersey, I will If it's my size or close to it, I'll wear it. If I can get it on my body, I'll wear it. If you want to just buy us the kids' jersey that we can hang up, we'll also take it. You know our address. So I
also might be able to wear it.
Yeah, if it's a kid, that's true. If it make it at least a youth large, and Haney's got a shot. Yeah. So that's thing one. But I responded, and I was like, the point is not to move the needle in 2024. It's to open a championship window in a few years. Got to have a longer view than jersey sales and wins in 24-25. And here's where it gets fun. He responds, I assume it's a he, I can't stand it with you, dude. I can't with you, dude. You're a fire starter. You have to be in your office just laughing after you say some of this stuff. All right, Mr. Hoffman, letting go of Denny was a future move. This team is consistently mismanaged. Something of the NBA. I don't know that word. I like the draft picks, but everyone knows it's a crapshoot. Maybe one will be productive. I fear this team will fade further into obscurity. The NBA wants to expand the brand, and we have not been good for business. I love the Wizards' bullets, but we have been barking up this tree with no fruits in sight. I wish I could share your optimism, but I can only judge from past performance, and based on that, the outcome is bleak. We can't even get KD, a DC native, to look in our direction. Most players are proud to go home and play. Every Cali native thinks it's an honor to go home and play for the Lakers, Clippers, or Warriors. I hope you're right, but I fear you are wrong. See, this is why you try not to be mean to people, because there's a deep, long-seated hurt. This is a long-time Wizards bullet fan, Anthony. If I was just a jerk, that would have been mean, because this man has clearly been beaten down by years of mediocrity. But here's what I would tell this man. You've been beaten down by years of mediocrity. So this type of rebuild has never been attempted before in all of those years of mediocrity. They've been really bad, but never on purpose. They've never had a plan like this. And this is kind of my thing is like, what's your plan? What did you want them to do that would make them be good now? Because trying to be good quickly is exactly how they have gotten here. And if you are fearful that they cannot become more obscure than they are now, I have bad news. This is the bottom. The Wizards are already the laughingstock of the NBA. And so you might as well give Will Dawkins and Michael Winger. I'm not here to just blindly defend them. I'm here to say everyone else has tried every other way. These are the guys right here, right now. Let's see what they can do, because their plan is better than any other plan, and their resumes are better than any other resumes of any people that have worked here, certainly in the Leonsis era, and frankly, probably before that.
Yeah, I was about to say, we haven't seen, the move that they made ever really. I viewed it as a chess move where they're thinking, 3-4 times, 4 years, 3-4 years ahead of, where we are. They're being proactive instead of reactive. So I just think it's different. And, sometimes it takes getting, I guess, accustomed to, that kind of thinking. So
yeah, it takes time. And you have to be good at selecting players, and you have to get lucky. You have to say maybe win a lottery when David Robinson comes out, and win another one 15 years later when Tim Duncan comes out. As Brittany's Dale, Brian Isdale. This font is very small on my laptop. I don't know why I don't just make it bigger. Bryant Tisdale, 2446, says the Wizards have not won 50 games since 1979. The Spurs, since 79, have won 50 games 26 times. Not even championships. I haven't double-checked that fact, by the way. But 26, I believe that. Just 50-win seasons. This is the standard of a lost franchise. Yeah. Winning 42. If Will Dawkins was told you have to win 40 games this year, he could. He'd go make a couple of moves, sign a couple of, overpay for some free agents, and you can win 40 games pretty easy. But you're never going to get closer to an actual championship. And I get it, because to wrap this up, Funny Comms 326 is like, so another season of tanking, great. That's what every fan signs up for. We'll see you in 5 years. Just then don't be interested, because this is the plan. You can either follow along and be invested along the way, understanding that it's going to be slow and painful, or we'll see you again at Capital One Arena in 5 years. And that's fine. I'm not telling you have to just sit here and spend your time watching losing basketball. Trust me, it's not that fun. I've watched way too many Wizards games, but I also got to a point where, there's only so many that I was going to watch, especially when a bunch of dudes got hurt. I was like, if there's no player A, B, C, D, or E, like what? I'm not going to watch the Go-Go. With all due respect to the Go-Go, an important part of the franchise. But like, if I'm trying to break down the Wizards, I'm not going to watch the Go-Go. And if the Go-Go wind up playing in Wizards uniforms, like, I don't need to watch that by the end of the year. It's going to be a while, but they're doing the right things along the way. So there's that. That includes training Denny Avdia. And this is where things got real fun. Andrew A 5547 says, I really liked Denny and how he improved, and I was initially disappointed in the trade. But realistically, I don't think he would ever be a good team's first or second or even third option / best player. Same way how I feel about Kuzma and Poole. These guys are great role players that can shine on a bad team, but can never really carry / lead a good team to success. If these guys were so great, we probably would have won more than 15 games. We don't want to repeat what we did with Beal, giving a third, fourth option player a supermax. This is my entire thing with Denny that just blows my freaking mind. And I realize that there are a select group of specific Denny fans, right? Like, he's the most successful Israeli basketball player ever. So some of the comments even start like, hey, hello from Israel. I don't like your Denny take. I'm like, I get it. He's your guy. In the same way that if a player from DC or from your high school became a pro and you heard some sports talk radio host halfway across the world criticizing them, you'd probably be pretty pissed. So, like, I'm not even talking to people who are, quote-unquote, standing Denny Avdia for obvious, for lack of a better word, tribal reasons. Like, I get that. He's your guy. But Wizards fans who want to see the Wizards do well, and specifically have watched the Wizards for a long time, are you really wanting them to do what they did with Bradley Beal with Denny Avdia? Because in 4 years when they want to be good, he's going to need major money. He's probably going to be, especially if he's one of the better options on a bad team, he's going to put up numbers and demand like a close to a max contract. And I don't think that's what you want to pay Denny Avdia just as you start to become competitive and you want flexibility to sign free agents. And by the way, Bradley Beal was way better than Denny Avdia. Bradley Beal at his peak was an all-NBA player, which means he's one of the 15 best players in the world. All-star is one thing. All-NBA, they don't hand those out, and Beal got there. And as much as, you know, I have my qualms with Brad as a player and kind of what that did to what the Wizards thought of him and how much he affects winning, like, Bradley Beal was one of the NBA's best scorers for a very short stretch and an all-NBA player. Denny Avdia averaged 14.7 points per game last year. And you want to pay him in 4 years max money? Because he might get to, if things go great, he's 20 and 10 maybe? Probably less than that? No. So you trade him at his max value and you let other guys get minutes. Like, I just don't understand why this is so complicated. But it is, I guess, if you think Denny's a superstar who in 4 years will be in his prime and is actually the next Jason Tatum. I don't get that. And part of it goes to this comment from Xavier D, 3931, who says, I never was really a Denny fan from the jump because the main reason he started to break out is because opportunities opened up as the second and third option. If he stays on the same projected path, then overpay was going to be inevitable. Once his extension was up, we got great value for him. Bingo, bango, bongo. All right, last but not least, a quick shout out to Kornheiser10, who commented, Anthony, on your video, or our video, where / our segment where we banned you from Audi Field, that he was here to support the Newhouse Mafia. So Kornheiser10, salute to you. Go Orange. But Revel in the Blue says, Anthony, I'm not saying he can't come back, but we need to sage Audi over the summer, and he needs to wear at least 20 good luck charms at the next game. Anthony, are you in possession of at least 20 good luck charms?
I am not.
Well,
I also don't have Sage.
Well, I think we can get both.
Okay.
Get Kyrie on the phone for the Sage. Too soon?
Nah, not at all.
He also might have some good luck charms. Just make sure that they weren't the ones that he used during the finals.
Yeah.
Go find the Game 6 Cleveland, or the Game 6, Game 7, 2016 good luck charms. Or, frankly, whatever he used in the Minnesota series, because he obliterated them.
Man.
And it all went horribly wrong now, didn't it?
Yeah.
All right, that's Never Read the Comments. If you want your comment read and reacted to, you can leave it at Craig Hoffman, at the Team 980, or at Hoffman W Sports. And when we get back here on the Team 980, Anthony, what I know in 15 minutes we have Quincy Wilson, the Olympian from Bullis High School. His coach is going to join us at 6:15. What do we got next?
We got this, that, and the other thing. We got Bronny. We got Bronny James. Well, we got Braun. We got Bronny James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A check-in on the James gang and a couple other random stories from around the world of sports. So that's still to come. Final hour next on the Team 980. Coming up in 10 minutes from right now, Quincy Wilson, the 16-year-old 400-meter superstar from Bullis High School. His coach, who also coaches Messiah Russell, the the Olympian and American champion in the 100-meter hurdles, will join us here on the Hoffman Show. It'll be our pleasure to welcome in Coach Joe Lee. I'm so excited to talk to him, Anthony, because one of the things I think about a lot when I'm working with athletes, especially super high-level ones as a strength and conditioning coach and as a performance coach, is like if I have someone who's really special and who is like excelled, and that doesn't have to be like world-class in the way that Quincy Wilson is, that pressure that actually intensifies it to another level, but even someone who's like about to go D1 in soccer, they're going to play for a mid-major school, but like still, that's an elite athlete. It's hard to go Division I. And maybe they've got something with the way that they move, the way they do whatever, that is not optimal, and especially when they're young, but they've gotten this far. Like, how much do you coach that up? Do you risk ruining the thing that makes them special? And especially when it's not something on a ball, it's not something, anything other than literally how they run, when running is their sport. I'm so curious how he approaches coaching these young, talented athletes, and he's as good as anybody with what he's done at Bullis High School and a number of Olympians now coming through the program. So excited to talk to Joe coming up in a little bit. Right now, though, a segment we call This, That, and the Other Thing. We take a look at some of the stories in sports that we're paying attention to, but maybe we don't need to pay attention to them for an entire sports talk radio segment here in the District of Columbia. This one could be hours of sports talk out in L.A. The James family has signed its pair of deals to stay with the Lakers. This is both this and that, and then we'll figure out what we want to talk about for the other thing, Anthony. But Bronny James, 4 years, $8 million. First 2 is guaranteed. LeBron signing basically a max deal. They're still working out the final details. There's a chance he takes $1 million less than max because it could keep them out of the second apron. But it still does not leave them a lot of wiggle room. And this is kind of the thing that I talked about with the Lakers when we were having this discussion about drafting Bronny. Drafting Bronny James is not a ridiculous thing to do. He was somewhere between the 45th and 80th best prospect in the draft, and most people had him right around 50 to 60, which is exactly where he got drafted. It's not unreasonable for them to draft Bronny James with his dad being there. But then there was all this talk of like, well, they're going to give him a guaranteed deal instead of a two-way, and things that second-round picks never get. And I understand, like I heard J.J. Redick's comments, of course, now the Lakers head coach, about Bronny, and they see him as this incredibly ideal fit for what they want to do from a player development standpoint. He's the perfect piece of clay. He's got length. He's got high basketball IQ. He's got some shot somewhere in there that he's shown in drills. He hasn't necessarily figured that out at game speed yet. He's, again, that high basketball IQ that you can't teach, and they think they can round him into a good NBA player. But you give that guy a two-way contract and he spends a lot of time in the G League and he doesn't take up one of your 15-man roster spots. It's how that works. And it was up to the Lakers to look at Rich Paul and, to whatever extent LeBron is involved, LeBron James, Rich Paul, of course, Bron and Bronny's agent, and go, we're happy to unite dad and son because we believe Bronny has earned this and he's good enough to that we can grant this wish, right? But we're not giving him special treatment because that's not good for Bronny outside of financially, which his dad's a billionaire. What does he care, right? It's not good for Bronny and it's not good for us. So this is kind of the line I draw with the Lakers where you can believe in Bronny all you want to, and I'm glad that they genuinely believe in him, assuming that they genuinely do. But when you sign a 2-year guaranteed deal on the same day that you sign his dad to a 2-year deal, it certainly seems like there's a package deal there and some kind of giving the organization to LeBron that goes beyond what they should be doing here. And again, I'm someone who's very comfortable with the pick. I'm okay with LeBron getting a favor because he's LeBron freaking James. But when you cross a line this far, you're no longer in a gray area for me. This seems on its face utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Craig, and it's quite simply, Bronny only played 25 games. I don't know if he played 25 games in college. I think he did.
Yeah.
But
He didn't play a full season because of the heart attack. And, like, again, that's a reason to believe in him in terms of upside. Like, his stats last year, don't worry about them. He had to play his way back into shape after having a heart attack. So assuming all the medical is fine, like, he's going to be clearly a better basketball player. I'm not saying he's going to have put up great numbers in the NBA, but, like, we don't know what he would have been as a college player. Realistically, in any other circumstance, he should have probably gone back to school.
Yeah, I just feel as though, the lack of experience at the collegiate level already, put Bronny behind a little bit. So the fact that he doesn't have the opportunity to, go to the G League, stay active, because I don't think he's going to be playing night in, night out. So if he's just constantly just sitting on the bench, is he really getting better? I guess he's understanding the game a little bit better. But experience is where, you gain, real game experience and things of that nature, real life actions. And I just don't think sitting on the bench is going to necessarily develop his game. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely do wish he had that in his contract just to be able to, have that flexibility. To just get better night in, night out.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get guaranteeing it. It's okay to give him a chance. I have no problem. He's earned to JJ Redick is right at that opening press conference. Bronny has earned this chance with who he is as a basketball player and what he was as a prospect. He has not earned a 2-year NBA contract. That's just not how this works for anybody else. And as proof point, last year's 55th pick, whose name I don't even remember, signed a non-guaranteed $700,000 deal. And Bronny got 10 times that.
Yeah.
And multiple years. That is very silly. LeBron getting a 2-year basically max, like whatever. That he's LeBron James. He still averages 26-6 or 26-8-8 or whatever he averaged last year. That is a max level player. No issues with that. And we'll see what they can build around him. So that's this and that. Quickly, the other thing, just a story to monitor. I wish this had broken yesterday when we had Evan Novi-Williams on the show. We talked about all the Celtics stuff. But just a very bizarre story in a lot of ways. The Angel City Football Club, which is the NWSL team in LA, is about to sell for $250 million, which is amazing. Everyone thought Michelle Kang overpaid for the Spirit when she paid $30 billion like 3-4 years ago. And now there's going to be a team that goes for $250 billion. But it's not the price that's the story. The story is who it's going to, which is the wife of Disney CEO Bob Iger. So, of course, Disney owns ESPN, one of the league's media partners, and the biggest sports media apparatus on the planet. And I just think it's weird, Anthony, for the wife of the guy who's the CEO of the media company who covers the league to own one of the teams. Like, they're about to launch this new show with our guy Sebastian Salazar and Ali Krieger about women's soccer. Like, if you're Sebi and you're hosting the show, are you like, I don't know if I want to criticize Angel City tonight because the boss's wife owns the team. Like, there's just certain ethical, like, I'm happy that the league continues to grow and the valuation is high, and I think they'll do it. Like, I think Bob Iger is really smart, like, and I'm sure his wife is incredibly smart, and she's going to be the main point person here. But there's just ethical lines that just get blurred in modern, and it goes both ways, right? Now you have a media company owning a team, but you also have owners on the media. Like, I don't understand how Grant Hill calls NBA games. He owns the Atlanta Hawks. He's like a minority owner. Shaq has, I think, a stake in the Kings. Dwayne Wade has a stake in the Utah Jazz. How are these guys on TV talking about the league? They have ownership stakes. It's weird. Oh, maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm just old.
Yeah.
Shut up. When we get back, dude who's not old is Quincy Wilson. 16 years old. He's headed to the Olympics as part of the USA's 4x400 team. We talked to his coach, Bullis High School's Joe Lee, next. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. You miss any part of the show, you can always check us out on the podcast. Just search the Hoffman Show wherever you listen to yours. Right now, it is our pleasure to bring in a guy who's going to have a very stressful couple of weeks coming up as he watches a few of his athletes compete in Paris. It is Bullis High School track coach Joe Lee with us here on the Hoffman Show. Joe, how we doing?
Okay, I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to watch Quincy run in the 4, watch Masai run in the hurdles. We'll start off with Quincy, and for those that don't know, we're talking about Quincy Wilson. To first, 16 years old. So this is still one of your athletes, Masai, one of your alums. And I just got to start. Like the first time you saw Quincy Wilson run, what's going through your head? Take me back to that first time you meet him, the first time you see him on the track.
Well, the first time I saw him run, it was actually at an age group track meet, and I noticed he was doing really well. He was in the 8th grade, and he was blown away the competition. But it was age group competition. It wasn't high school. It definitely wasn't college or the pro. So I was very impressed with his heart, his determination. I saw he had a lot of technical flaws, just learning how to sprint properly, which, a lot of kids do at that age, and not just for track, but for any sport. You just, the older you get, the more you apply and the better you become. But I was just impressed. I also noticed his stature. He wasn't that big. He wasn't a big guy. The same meet, I wound up sitting in stands and happened to talk to his mom. His mom actually came up to me and said, "Are you Coach Lee?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Quincy Wilson's mom." I said, "Oh, hey, I just saw him run." She said, "Yeah, I'm glad you did because we want to come to Bullis next year and start our high school career or have our high school career be with you guys." Wow. And I'm like, okay, what kind of joke is this? Because clearly at that time they lived down in the Virginia Beach area. And I'm like, that's, I've heard of commutes, but anybody doing a 4-hour commute one way. So she's like, no, we're going to move our entire family up to Maryland to come to Bullis if you would have us. And I was like, heck yeah, you want to leave now? But wow. Obviously I had to finish 8th grade. So fast forward, he came to Bullis and he did well. He played football, actually, believe it or not, freshman year, and he's a small guy as a freshman. He's like 5'6", maybe 130 at best. And so they decided, his family decided that let's maybe not pursue the football career. Although he was very good, he's ultra competitive, just didn't have the size, and also he was susceptible to being injured. So they decided to turn to track and full-time track, and it turned out he went from there to being on the Olympic team.
Just like that. And that's so funny, Joe, because, what was that, 2 years ago? He's in 8th grade? Something like that? It's like, oh, yeah, back when he was in 8th grade. It's like, 2 years ago. I'm so curious and I'm so excited we have you on because I've worked in the strength and conditioning world and still do. And one of the things that I always consider with my athletes is exactly what you talk about, those technical flaws. And I'm so curious because I've worked with some good ones. I have never worked with an Olympian, and especially an Olympic track athlete. But you have this fear as a coach of, I don't want to mess it up. And especially when you have, maybe some technical flaws, but they're so special. And you're like, I don't want to fix something that might be making them special. So when you work with your athletes in general, and especially someone like Quincy, how do you approach what you want to fix, the order you want to fix in, and all those kind of really coaching nuance type of things that can help guide the athlete to be the best version of themselves over time? And how has that timeline maybe changed at all when, they go to the Olympics at 16 years old?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a great point. So, I believe personally, one of my philosophies in coaching is that coaching is a science and also an art, so the science portion of it is, where do we need to be biomechanically, whether it's running with the proper mechanics or if it's shooting a basketball or kicking a soccer ball, whatever the case may be. There are certain mechanics that are innate that are going to produce success if you just, follow the biomechanics and the metrics around that. With that being said, there's an art to it as well. So, coaches who are just stuck to the numbers only, they miss the opportunity to allow kids to find their special, unique talent and gift. I believe everybody has a different style of doing things. You just got to make sure you find that style after you get the basics covered. With Quincy, if you watch his form, it does not look like your prototypical sprinter. But I would say, again, it's just my opinion, when we try to make everybody look like everybody else, you lose your greatness somewhere in between. So what we did with Quincy, we said, okay, look, we just want to teach you how to run what we call in the sprint world front side, right? So meaning we want your it's a layman term, but we want you to bring your knees up in front of you as opposed to kicking back behind you, right? So front side mechanics is knees up, everything going forward, up and down. So when we taught him that, things like his arm movement and even how it's so funny, he still runs like a kid a lot of ways because his arm will kind of swing out to the side and he tilts his head back like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old will do. But that's his thing. Like when he's going after people, and even last week at the Olympic trials, he's coming after grown men, and he's tilting his head back like he's a young kid. But that's part of his superpower. So we're not trying to change everything, but just change a few things that'll help him just strengthen where he is. But the special things that make him Quincy, we want to keep the same.
I love that answer so much. I'm totally with you, the art and science thing. And to take it back to sports for the audience for a second, like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry shoot differently. It works for both of them. You never change Steph Curry's shot. You never change Klay Thompson's shot, even though they're both the same. But, there may be at some point in their careers, someone brought their elbow in. And that's exactly what Joe is talking about with the front side mechanics, the backside mechanics. And so I also love the story, and I definitely noticed that. And I think Otto Bolden actually mentioned it in the broadcast, like the head tilt back. But if you overcoach him, he's thinking about it too much and he slows down. You'd rather just have him run full speed at whatever he can do, and that intensity will show up in the stopwatch. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that between now and the Olympics, is there like one more thing you're trying to add? Are you trying to refine certain things that you've already worked on? What's the next month, roughly month, look like for you two?
Yeah, so, great question. We're not trying to add anything. We're just more so trying to refine, to your point, of things that he already knows. So, for example, I'll give you a funny story. I haven't shared it with anybody, and he's going to get me for telling this, but that's okay. He's not here. So there's several things. Plus, he's a kid, he's 16.
Yeah, we can take advantage of that a little bit. He's still 16. So, it's just two guys having fun on the radio. Joe, what are we doing? No, so we're at the Olympic trials. And again, he's still a kid. He's still raw. He's only, like you said, 2 years ago, he's in the 8th grade. Like, what's going on here? So his block settings. So he's still trying to work on and figure those out. And we have a very particular way where you set your blocks for your front foot and your back foot, right? And he knows how to do that. But he just, on this particular day, I think it was the trials, he just forgot. So, he's working on him. And again, this is on national TV or international TV. And he just finally just picks him up and just puts him down just anywhere. And he just jumps in and set go. I'm like, oh my gosh. And all these cameras are on him. And I'm like, they're going to think I'm the worst coach in the world, because who teaches their kid to just pick up the blocks and just drop them somewhere and give them the blocks, right? I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, yeah, I couldn't figure it out. So I just put it there. I was like, okay, well, we got to work on your start. And there's certain things, block clearance and acceleration that we do. And he knows, but, he just, he's 16. So when we fixed it, we adjusted it for the next round. But, stuff like that. We're not trying to overload. We have a less is more principle here at Bullis, where we're going to put a lot of volume on kids, and we don't train them 6 days a week and, do 2-a-days and all that kind of stuff. We really believe in quality over quantity. So we're just going to continue to sharpen him up, work on his sprint mechanics, work on his race model, understanding where to go and when to go, and then when to hold back, because the 400 is one of those things where you have to be very precise in when you make your move. Otherwise, you will be in quicksand in the home stretch. But yeah, and again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So to add something now that would be outside of what he's learned over the past 2 years doesn't make much sense to me. But he's having fun and I'm having fun coaching him. So we're going to stick with what we are and just fine tune some things as we get ready for the games. Joe Lee, the track coach at Bullis High School, with us on the Hoffman Show. When it comes to that race plan, the race strategy, Does it change at all compared to like what a lot of the other Elite 400 runners will do? Because we've talked about it. Like he's still small. Like there is a growth spurt. Like if he hits a growth spurt and grows into his man body, like watch out. Every record in the book, American record, world record. If he's this fast already, oh my God, the sky could be the limit. Of course, that's just natural with where he is right now. But he's not there yet. And so the strength that it takes to run a 400, as he's still developing that, how does that affect the race plan where he's still able to put up these times? Clearly, you guys have figured something out. I'm curious if it's different than what you might tell, the top line guys who have more experience and more strength to them.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because, we have a certain philosophy in our program that we feel it works, and it works if you're super talented like Quincy, or if it works if it's your first time entering the sport and learning it. It's almost easier when you bring kids in who don't know as much because you have less to undo, right? So to answer your question, as he gets bigger and stronger, he's just going to be doing more of what he already does, right? So we don't change the philosophy that we have for him. We believe the 400 is a sprint. So in the beginning of the race, you have to get out like it's a sprint. You don't jog out of the blocks. You accelerate out of the blocks, right? So as he gets bigger and stronger, he's just going to be able to accelerate even faster. But, I just really want everybody to know that, like, this is not normal, in particular for this event. Like the 400 meters is arguably the hardest event in track and field in terms of the demand that it puts on your body. Like that's why when they cross the finish line, nobody's just smiling and, waving to the crowd. They are on their back or at least holding down, hands on their knees and just, really trying to, gasp for air because it's a unique blend between aerobic and anaerobic capacity and, speed and strength. So to have a 16-year-old do this, it's not normal. It's never been done or never been seen before because you'll get, again, it's rare for a college kid to make the 400-meter relay pool, but let alone a high school sophomore. So this, again, as he gets bigger and stronger, we're going to do more of the same. There are certain things that he'll be able to do as he gets stronger. It's just like, for example, we're just introducing weights to him. He's not lifting the gym. In fact, we'll do things like 10 and 15-pound weights and a lot of body weight exercises. But as he gets stronger, it'll make him more powerful. But again, we don't want to, we want to keep the main thing, and where he's feeling fast and fluid. But most importantly, man, that he's having fun, and he is having a blast. Trust me, he loved every moment of the Olympic trials and was not scared one bit.
Man, that's awesome. I was going to ask about that. Just how much do you try? Because the attention is obviously high. The tension is high. It's the Olympic trials. Even if you're 16, if you're there, you're a competitor. And especially like you said earlier, the way he played football and everything, like this dude's competitive. How much do you see it as your responsibility? And in what ways do you try to make sure that he's still a 16-year-old kid having fun?
Yeah, that's the hardest thing, because, again, there's not really a blueprint or a book for this. Cindy McLaughlin, she's the top sprinter, arguably, in the world right now. She's the world record holder in the 400-meter hurdles, and she made the team as a 16-year-old as well. But it's very different. Girls mature differently than guys. And, a boy is still, this guy's not even shaving yet right now. He's going to hate that I said that. It's interesting because, I really think he's the kind of athlete that is, whatever he does, when he locks in, he's locked in just like the pros, if not more so in some cases. And I know that sounds like, Joe, come on. You can't tell me a high school kid's more locked in than the pros. I'm telling you, watch this kid work. If you watch the finish of his races, and again, there's still a lot of technical flaws that we're working on. I'm not saying he has everything down perfect. That's the great point, that he's got so much more to work with. He's got so much room for growth. But watch his last 100 meters. We made a big mistake in the finals, and we know what we did wrong, and we're going to fix that because we're going to race him one more time before the Olympics. And he came off the line, or he came off the curb in last place, which has never happened before, I don't think, in his life. And he went and snatched 3 people. He snatched 3 professional athletes and was coming for more. In the semifinals, same thing happened. So he wouldn't even come off in last, but he was for those guys. And you hear the announcer on NBC yelling, and here comes the kid. If he has 10 more meters, he gets both of those pros. So his main superpower, I tell you, is between the ears. Like, he literally believes that he can do anything that he sets his mind to, regardless of limitations, regardless of size, regardless of anything that he doesn't have. He knows that he has the heart and the mindset to get it done, and he goes after it, similar to you see pros like a Steph Curry or like a LeBron or, like a Kobe, rest in peace. All those guys, they're just built different. This kid is built different, and I'm telling you, that's the difference. Not that he doesn't have to be 6'2" and 180 pounds.
And it'd be real scary if one day he is. Quincy Wilson running the 4x4 at the Olympics in Paris. But, Joe, that is not your only athlete that will be there. Your only current one, but not the only athlete that you've coached that will be there. Joe Lee is our guest for another minute or two here on the Hoffman Show, the track coach at Bullis High School. Messiah Russell messed around and broke the trials record in the 100-meter hurdles. What is Messiah's superpower, and what does it mean to you to see her also make this Olympic team?
Yeah, I mean, we've been privileged to have some great ones over the years at Bullis. A lot of national champions and All-Americans and even people running at the trials. We had actually 4 athletes run at the Olympic trials that are Bullis, either current or grads, Quincy obviously being the current one, and Messiah and Ryan Willie, who just graduated from the University of Florida, and Leah Phillips, who's at LSU. So they were all at the Olympic trials as well. So we've seen a lot of talent, but to answer your question, what makes her different, I don't know how to better say it than, Messiah's just a dog. I mean, she's relentless in her pursuit to be the best and to overcome any obstacle in her way. She had a tough season when she turned pro, and she had some technical things that she was working on with her coach, and we've talked, obviously we keep in communication with all our kids. We try to, between our staff, and we're not coaching them, but we're just watching them and encouraging them that it's going to work out. And she's relentless. She is relentless. And when she sets her mind on a goal, you better look out because she's coming. And she's not, as Charles Barkley would say, she's not whistling in any graveyards. So she's there to compete. She's fearless, and she believes in herself. And the reason why you can get to that, again, it's something that we know as athletic trainers and coaches. When you believe in yourself, that is a byproduct of the work that you've put in. If I know I put the work in, I know that eventually this thing is going to pop. And it did at the right time in the perfect way. And like you said, she broke the child's record set by Gail Devers, who's one of the greatest hurdlers in the history of the sport. So it was pretty awesome. That's her, and she's always been that way since she was a freshman. Small in stature as well. She's still only 5'4". And yet she's going out there and killing it with the best of them, and we couldn't be more proud.
That's so tough in that event too, because those hurdles are not small in the 100, and there's only so many steps to make up when your stride's a little bit shorter. Last thing I'll ask you, Joe, why are all 100-meter runners nuts? Like, you talk about her being a dog. Every single 100, like, if you're not a little crazy, you can't be great at the 100. And I mean that as a compliment, to be very, very clear. What is it about the 100-meter runners, men, women, whatever, that you have to have that next-level dog in you to be great at that distance?
I mean, 100-meter runners and hurdlers, anybody who's doing a straightaway event, like, you got to have that little bit crazy in you, because it's almost like a prize fight. Like, those guys are out there, it's the ultimate competition in that who is the fastest from A to B. And then we've all done it. Like, let's race from here to the street corner, or, let's go out here and see who's the fastest and on the football field, or whatever it is. So when you have the best of the best of the best, that energy is flowing, the testosterone and all that is happening. But you got to really be on your game. Otherwise, Carl Lewis said it this way. He said, you make one mistake at the beginning of the race and you got 99 meters to regret it. So you better be on your game, and you better believe, and you better come prepared. There's a lot of showmanship there. Noah Lyles, who, we know really well, just have a relationship with him because he's from the DMV. He's hilarious because he's out there yelling and screaming right before the race and trying to get in his competitors' heads a little bit. But again, he's, the world champion, so he's deserved that. But it's almost like, what makes a boxer get in the ring and think that they're going to come out victorious. It's just something in them that, is a little crazy, but a little confident, and, something else in between, probably with their skills. But I can't put my hand on it or my finger on it specifically. But
no,
I
kind of think you just did, though, because while there is a technical acumen that obviously matters, there's no strategy in a straightaway sprint. It's the prize fighter who has to win by knockout. There's no strategy. I'm throwing a haymaker, and if it lands, I win, and if not, I lose. Like that actually, I think, explains it well. It's all in war. Yeah. That's it.
All out war, all out assault. Then there's the strategy is, I'm gonna beat your tail from here to there. Come prove me wrong, right? That's it. There's strategy in other events, but there's technical components to
For
it,
sure.
Of course. There's things that you have to do out of the blocks and things you have to do as you transition, things you have to do it when you get to top end speed. But everybody's doing the same thing. Like there's nobody who's doing anything different at the highest level. Like they're all doing the same thing. So when that is all said and done, all right, who's got it? And
right,
you better be on your game because again, you can't make a mistake. If you make a mistake, you're gonna pay for it because somebody's gonna eat you up. You don't have time to get it back.
There's no starting your kick 10 meters sooner in the 100. You get out of the blocks, you go, and we'll see you at the finish line. Joe, this was fantastic. I really appreciate your time, your insight, the stories. We'll definitely have to find an excuse to get you back on the show, and we'll be in touch, man. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, man. It's been fun.
It's Joe Lee, everybody, head track coach at Bullis High School. He's got a couple of Olympians headed to Paris. Nice enough to take some time to join us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, we'll wrap things up, wrap up our week. We're done. This is our Friday. Anthony's going to play Rebecca Black. We'll do real things. Or will he play Rebecca Black? This is actually a show mystery. But then we're going to go home. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980.
You think the pain gon' let you disrespect Pop? I think that Oakland show will be.
Well, that's not Rebecca Black. This is the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Again, a huge, enormous thanks to Joe Lee. What an interview that was. And we talking on break. That was one of my favorite interviews we've done in a long time. We've had some good ones.
Yeah, that one was up here, man. That's top, definitely in the top 5 easily. Maybe top 3.
Yeah,
easily.
Remember, we on Monday did our awards of the year, whatever you want to call it. Our year in review, Hoffman Show Awards. Yeah, on our anniversary show. We already have. Should we do this in document form, or do you want to create a folder? But I feel like we should probably honestly do both. We should come up with some categories for next year, and we should log the audio. And for interview of the year, Joe Lee, early contender, high school track coach at Bullis. If you missed it or you missed part of it, rewind in the Odyssey app or go search it at your leisure this holiday weekend. Just search The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. All right. Any other loose ends, Anthony, that we want to tie up here from the radio show perspective?
No, I mean, I guess we could wish everybody a happy 4th.
We can. What, you got any plans?
So I'm going to Dallas this weekend to celebrate my birthday.
Nice.
I have friends down in the Dallas area.
Are you going out in Uptown and doing the whole like Dallas-cine bit? Like, what are we doing?
So I'm going to hit Six Flags on Saturday.
Okay. It's definitely not Uptown.
I will be downtown. I won't be uptown.
Okay.
My friend, he lives in downtown Dallas.
Okay.
And then I have a friend that also lives in like the burb. She lives like 35, 40 minutes away. So I don't know if I'm going that way. But I'll be in downtown Dallas to, explore, see what Dallas is like.
You're not a big barbecue guy, are you?
I like barbecue.
Okay. There's a couple spots you should hit down there.
Turkey Leg Hut?
I haven't heard Turkey Leg Hut.
Okay.
Pecan Lodge is the number one spot in Dallas.
Pecan Lodge.
It's not. It's in a part of downtown. That's really good. Also, you should have lots of tacos.
I'm looking forward to
taco
tacos.
scene. Mico Cina's probably, if you get to the brisket tacos at Mico Cina, takes me right back.
I'm gonna need you to text me a list of these places.
All right, let me get on that right quick.
Outside of that, part of the reason I played Not Like Us, because I think that's going to be played at, most of the cookouts. If you go to a cookout, tomorrow.
It's going to be on repeat at a lot of cookouts.
Yes.
The soundtrack to the weekend is Dan.
Nah, for real.
I'm curious. So this will be our first 4th of July in our current place, and I think we'll be able to see some fireworks from our balcony.
Ooh, that's gonna be lit.
Because if you
go out to the backside?
the direction that we face, look, DC. The beauty of Washington D.C. is in the district. If you have a view of the skyline, you have a view of the skyline, right? Because it's not blocked by tall buildings because of the building limits. So we are not so far from the mall that we can't, if the fireworks are coming up over the buildings and are at the height of the monument and the whole deal, we might get some fireworks views. I don't know for sure because we're not right there, but there's definitely a chance. I hope we're kind of close enough that we can see them if we want to, but we barely hear them. That's what I want.
I was about to ask, have you already started to hear, the fireworks?
Yeah. No, luckily I haven't yet.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, definitely when I used to live out in the burbs, it was the whole week people are like, pew. You're just like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
And even the week after. When you're in the inner city, man.
Well, yeah, and that's, I am definitely a little concernicus about that here in the District of Columbia. There were actually, I got on the metro on, I think it was Monday, and there was definitely a couple of rascally teenagers firing some fireworks just generally outside the metro willy-nilly, and I was like, this doesn't seem optimal. I'm not going to, they're kids doing kid stuff. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape, but Can we not fire them with the cars around and the people around? And that did not seem. It was like a fireworks gun situation. There's probably
Roman candles.
Yeah, I think it might have just been a Roman candle situation, but I was just like, it was like kind of a flare almost, but like not a very strong one. Yeah, not ideal.
Steer clear, guys. Be safe.
Yeah, be safe. I'm not going to go full Chris Russell at the end. I don't know if you heard Russell at the end of his show. He's like, don't be an idiot. Don't blow off your hands. And I'm like, I mean, good advice.
Was JPP his dum-dum of the day?
He did bring up JPP. I don't think that was his dum-dum of the day, though.
Oh, I was about to say, you're about some years late.
Yeah, but, I mean, at this point, I feel bad for, like, it was obviously incredibly stupid, but, like, it's also tragic, and we can have empathy.
Yeah.
So there's that. Do we have any real things?
We have a couple of things.
Oh, okay. Well, quickly, I will tell you, holiday mailbag from Take Command available tomorrow. So there is fresh content for you. Of course, we are off the rest of the week, but between Nats game, Denton and Linnell filling in, there's all kinds of good stuff here on the radio if you're driving around. So make sure you keep it locked and loaded here to the Team 980. But without further ado, let's wrap up the show. It is time for real things, real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Ant, what do we got? We got time
All right,
for what?
so we have Paige Wilson, two-time WNBA MVP,
correct.
calling out the Queen. You know who the Queen is?
I sure do.
Well, you'll find out if you don't know.
Let me ask you this. You've been there 6 years now. Who do you want to come to Vegas and do a residency that has... Whoa, hold up, Asia. Come on, Beyonce?
And I say that with the deadest of faces. Beyonce, the queen bee. Yes. She doesn't even have to come here for a residency. She could just come to a game and just say what's up to us, and we're fine, because I know she got other stuff to do. So,
right.
Beyonce, girl...
I can't see Beyonce camping out in Vegas for like a month. She and Jay got something to do other than that, right?
She can go somewhere else and come back in. She doesn't have to stay here forever.
Okay, so one concert and one game attended is what you need from Beyonce.
That's all I ask.
Hey, look.
That is all I ask.
As a two-time WNBA MVP and maybe a three-time this year, I don't think that's a lot to ask, Asia. We're going to put it to the Beehive. We're going to see what happens.
There it is. I love the Beehive.
First of all, you always say you love the Beehive because if not, they come after you. 2, whose side is Michael Eaves on? By the way, that Odyssey courtesy of SportsCenter and ESPN. Seemed like he was playing both sides there.
Yeah,
Ultimately,
he was.
This needs to happen, though. She wished it for Usher, and it came true. So we'll see. Have a great 4th, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.